Okay, we're the 16th of November, here where I find myself in Alsace, in the eastern part of France. It's 30 past midnight AM, and I've just spent 2.5 hours recording a video where I wanted to introduce my documents. And here's the second part. I will talk about logic, nature and Geist, but my intention by introducing my documents was to begin my videos with a formal presentation, at least as long as I make videos, to show the view of the totality. And that's why I will briefly repeat what I've been talking about for 2.5 hours. I begin by the formal presentation. I improve intellectually every day, every waking hour, because I constantly gather new data, which I interpret through my conceptual lens, which makes me reinterpret the past, interpret the present, anticipate partly the future. So I become smarter, sometimes wiser, every waking hour. But if I stay awake too long, I become tired. That's why I need to sleep. So my intention is to do what I intended to do 3 hours ago, namely to record video in English, where I present not in a thorough, fully detailed view the totality, but to present the documents that I will use as long as I keep making videos which present the view of the totality of being, the movement of spirit, logic, nature and spirit itself, the categorization of the totality of being, becoming conscious of itself, which is another word for God, in a way, the formal definition. So I will briefly repeat what I talked about thoroughly in the previous video, that I will put the link when I post this video in the description below. I recommend that you take the time to watch the 2 hour and 30 minutes long video. And yeah, so I will put also the structure of this video so people can skip if they have watched, but I will just make a formal presentation of what I'm talking about, just for the sake of intelligibility. Yeah. So here is the formal presentation of the movement of spirit, predominantly in the Western world. But I begin with this because I've been talking about this for a lot of time. In the Western world, I will not comment systematically. I've done this for a very long time, but I just, in the case people stumble upon this video at first, this is how spirit, which is the consciousness of man, but also the spirit of God, becomes conscious of itself. These are the categories which structure the life of most Western countries, predominantly Northwestern Europeans westward of Poland, plus Northern America, Australia, New Zealand, and partly South Africa. These are the main categories. They are conceptually united, namely one side brings about the other, and they are in a mutually reciprocating interaction. The dominant ideological, here I simplify, the dominant ideological structure of the Western world over the past few decades in a chronological perspective has been shaped by a dominance of these categories. If you want more information, there's the video that I've just recorded. And the movement of spirit, the movement of consciousness, which is intellectual, political, anthropological, demographic, religious, spiritual in the Western world, is try to restore the balance. It's done unconsciously, but people are switching towards the right, which is partly the political right, but also simply a restoration of balance, which can be illustrated by the symbol of the yin and yang. And this is how people become conscious of the other that they oppose, and by becoming conscious of the other, they become conscious of themselves, and they reconstruct, re-establish, recreate, rediscover their identity. And these are the fundamental categories. By talking about one aspect, I talk about the other. People are switching toward more masculinity. That's the example of Jordan Peterson. The movement of Miktos is a reaction against feminism. Old white people, the rebellious white youth, and westernized immigrants, these are the demographic and sociological determinations of the right, predominantly in the US, Republican versus Democrat, but in most democratic countries in the Western world. A switch toward racism as a reaction against anti-racism. The values of family, country, and civilization, and a quest for recognition against identity politics and virtue signaling. Trash talking, and the emphasis put on IQ. The quest for educational standards as a reaction against the leftist view of newspeak, which is another word for political correctness. Multiple intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, etc., etc. Here's an emphasis is put on the quantitative, logical, mathematical view of intelligence, which is more productive in terms of achievements, etc., economic, etc. And all the other, an emphasis upon free speech, individualism, and a restoration of order as against control, collectivism, and tolerance. A return to traditionalism. The red pill is the word derived from pop culture, which is used to illustrate the movement of awakening, which is simply individuals, groups, becoming conscious of their identity by negating the current state, ideological state of political, intellectual, demographic, moral situation. And the red pill consists in becoming aware of the determination of the other in their negative aspect from the perspective of the right, and by becoming aware of the other, one becomes aware of the self, and the movement is a movement of rediscovery of the identity, and the opposite, they mutually, reciprocally determine one another. That's why there's an emphasis upon traditionalism, return to marriage and virtue, free market, free speech, individualism, libertarianism against the socialist, Marxist, collectivist aspect of Western societies, and eventually the oppositions. Let me see. The revolt of the social media against the media. An example is Twitter, bought by Elon Musk. The alternative media, BitChute, Parler, etc., etc. A critique of banking against the excesses of the welfare state. A revival of nationalism opposing globalism. The conspiracy theories denouncing the deep state, the elites. But like I said in my previous video, the conspiracy is the movement of spirit in its totality. Here it's simplified for the categories, but this is how the intellectual life of individuals, predominantly in the Western world, but in the world at large eventually, because spirit, intellect, and mind are universal, is structured, and the tension between East and West. And here I will make a brief comment, because I watch the news every day, and I've just watched the news between the end of the previous video and the beginning of the recording of this one, and I have decided to follow my plan, which is not very complex. It's simply to present my document. This is what I intended to do broadly 4 hours ago. It took more time than I thought, but I will present my document in a calm way, and I have decided here it will be connected with the singular, the particular, the universal. I have commented upon this. I will not make a long commentary, but simply the singular is contained under the particular, which is contained under the universal, namely A singular is an individual which is fully determined. He has particular characteristics. Examples of particular characteristics could be gender, generation, ethnic origin, intelligence, country of origin or of citizenship, economic status, marital status, sociological status. These are examples of particularities in the case of human beings. Each singular individual has particularities which characterizes him, which are shared by other particulars, and the universal encompasses all the determinations. The universal could be the truth, which is God in a way, which is in every singular individual, to the extent that he or she elevates himself precisely to this universality. But by going from the singular to the universal, one leaves aside determinations and elevates oneself to what is valid for everyone. But in order to reach what is universally valid, which we call the truth, one has to go through a cognitive process. And the truth in mathematics, logic, the sciences, economics, sociology, politics, eventually religion and philosophy is the same for all, but in order to access this level of universality, one has to use the mediation of one's own particularities. Namely, I take an example, in order to understand the dynamics of gender, one has to understand oneself as a man or as a woman, and by understanding the particular masculine or feminine aspect, one understands sexual difference on a universal scale. That's an example. Every man is a singular man in the particularity of every human being is a singular human in the particularity of male or female, and the universality would be the human condition in the context of gender. And the same goes with ethnicity. Each singular human being is ethnically determined. The universal would be the human race, but precisely the human race does not exist independently of all its particularization. The same goes for every determination. There are no cars in general, there are only brands and kinds or types of cars, and each singular car is a singularization of a particular brand, a universal type, etc., etc. That was for the presentation of what I've been talking about for 2.5 hours just previously, so now it's been 12.5 minutes, and I will stick to my, not my plan, but my newly found worldview. Namely, here I will talk broadly about what I do, what I've been doing in most of my days over the past few weeks, but broadly over the past few months, but more systematically, more consistently over the past few weeks for all the aspects. First, I sleep. Sleeping is important. When I don't sleep, I am not balanced and I am not stable. So after I've done recording these videos, this video and the previous one I'm uploading, I will grant myself a few hours of sleep just to be chemically balanced. So I study logic to structure my mind. I study my soul, I make introspection by studying psychological channels like Psych2Go, a very important channel to study one's own psychology, psychiatry, the problems that one eventually suffers from, and psychoanalysis, which is an inner introspection. These three determinations help have an inner view of the soul. So that's what I've been doing, because the more I understand my singular problems, the more I can try to solve them, which makes me be more balanced, more confident, which helps me share my universal thoughts in a more calm manner. It's not always the case, but I am less susceptible to strong negative emotions. It's not the case, but it's not always the case, but I can try to master my own inner imbalance by understanding this. That's the first moment. Then what I've been doing and what I will keep doing as long as I can, I clean my room. Namely, I order my immediate environment. The order of my mind and my soul, to the extent that it is order, is reflected in my immediate environment through my activity. Namely, I live in an order, structured environment. I practice minimalism. I willingly downgrade my standards of comfort, my standards of living. I've given up on many determinations of comfort for the sake of simplifying my lifestyle, toughening up, and for ethical reasons, I have bought and I will keep buying supplies as long as I can, not in a stressful way, but simply I go out and I pick up a few dozens of euros of supply to be able to be more independent and to help the people around me, to share with them eventually in case of problems. I promote cooperation and gifts to my immediate neighbors in order to encourage them to be more responsible, to make themselves supplies and to be more autonomous. So that's mutual, self-interested exchange, because it's in my best interest that my immediate environment be as stable as possible if I want to be able to keep sharing my ideas and to keep remaining stable. Yeah. Then that's what I've been doing, and once I've slept, tomorrow when I do my usual business before doing my serious work, which is also part of my serious work, I will go out and I've taken the moral engagement to clean the streets wherever I walk, pick up the cigarette butts to try to bring order on a singular level. And if everyone acted like this, if everyone followed this principle, there would be a radiation of order from the singulars at all levels, and it would prevent a lot of disorder and imbalance. I favor local businesses to stimulate local growth, local prosperity and independence, partly independence from the global corporations. I distribute food stamps to the people in need around me, driven by the American ethos of sharing goods with the community, not out of the kindness of my heart, but because it's my best interest that the people who are in need of help be helped independently of the state. Yeah. I make public donations. I have given hundreds of books worth of thousands of dollars of money, and I will keep doing this as long as I can, as long as I have to, because I have taken the moral engagement to share my property. That's my communist self, and that's my libertarian self. I try to favor communication, so that's from the inner, the mind, the inner soul, the immediate environment, larger environment, the neighborhood, here in the case of a building, the greater environment, the surroundings of the city, town, village, etc. The connections with my biological family and my spiritual family. I try to favor communication. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's contradictory. I follow the news and the means of communication, and I try to communicate about the country where I find myself, namely France, but we live in an age where all the information of the world is made available in real time, namely that's what is connected to the phenomenal appearance of spirit that I briefly commented at the beginning of the video, namely all the knowledge of the world is made available in real time through the internet, through the news, and the old determinations of countries, they are still valid from a legislative point of view, but they become obsolete in terms of the circulation of knowledge, in the sense that knowledge from all over the world is made available in real time. But if I focus too much, and if people focus too much on the information without a rigorous conceptual structure, they might get lost. That's why I've been trying to provide the formal presentation of the totality, the phenomenal appearance of spirit, and then logic, nature, and spirit. That's what I intend to do in the coming hours, to help give clarity. Then the same goes for the civilization, the world, and philosophy consists in reading books to clarify the mind, think properly about the totality, and eventually I've been watching my own videos to find sometimes guidance, inspiration, wisdom, light, strength, and I try to think about the totality. This is how I have organized my days, try to balance my singular self, my particular self, my universal self, because when I communicate on the internet, potentially anyone can access this piece of information. I try to put order in my life on a singular level, order and discipline, and balance, so that I can fix and solve universal global problems through my public communication, but I cannot solve universal problems if I am imbalanced or completely disrupted on a singular level, whether through my mind or my soul. That's what I've understood recently. So I have taken the decision, which will pay off at some moment, to focus on my singular self, but not in a selfish way, in a selfish negative sense, but simply to put order on a singular self, Luca, that's my name, so that I might have more time, more clarity, more stability to focus on particular and universal problems. Because if I try to solve the universal problems, which are the problem of the world at large, or the particular problems of Western civilization, or the US, Germany, England, France, etc., without being relatively stable on a singular level, I will bring more, and I have already brought more trouble. So I try to find a proper balance between inner stability, tranquility, and outer, because I want to reflect and radiate light and calm and stability as much as possible, and it begins on a singular level. Yeah. So now I will speak to myself, because I have made hundreds of videos over the past few months, and I receive almost no comments or no reaction. So I have lived for more than 8 months in a dialogue with myself, in a way, because when I communicate thoughts publicly, I receive no reaction. So I have had to build myself up in a way blindly, because I receive no return for the production, the intellectual production that I exteriorize. So I've understood that I find myself in a position where I have to apply my own teachings, knowing that my teachings partly consist in saying that I haven't understood a lot, and I'm partly blind. But yeah, so the decision here, I do not have to justify myself. I simply explain what I've decided, that I have to become the center of my world. And since there's only one world, I have to become the center of the world. And if I try to focus on all the information coming from everywhere, if I try to grasp the information on a singular level of my singular life, the connections that I have on my singular life, the particular informations about France as a country, which is the language that I speak in daily life, from the Anglo-Saxon world, from the West at large, from the world at large, there are too many informations, they go too fast. So if I try to focus on the exterior, I get confused. I can get a lot of clarity and a lot of insight, but I get confused. That's what I have decided, that's what I've been working on, more or less consciously for months, but it has become more conscious recently. I've decided to become the center of my world by sharing my worldview, and by ceasing to try to chase all the others, and to become the center, namely to provide my own worldview, which, because of the clarity when I speak ordinarily, by downgrading the level, trying to express myself in an intelligible language, the view that I provide will be clear, and it will enable others to see themselves reflected within the frame. There will be disagreements, misunderstandings, conflicts, but I have decided consciously to stand for my worldview, and to exteriorize the order. I don't have just order in me, but the order, the clarity, the light that I have in me, and to order this. And this is what I will do now by commenting the view of the totality. And I will just make a brief comment. One of the frustrating things that I find in intellectual production is that whenever someone publishes an article, or make an interview or a video, or produces any kind of content, the person who watches doesn't know, but who is this person? Not necessarily on a singular level, although I have given my name and my address in most of my videos for the past few months, but one doesn't know who does this person speak from, what is his or her worldview, what does he know, what does he believe, and that's, here I'm consistent, that's what I've been attempting to do in the previous video about the comment of the Phenomenology of Spirit, and now what I intend to do for the next at least couple of hours, the commentary of what I call the view of the totality, logic, nature, spirit. I will explain in a intelligible way what I mean, and now as long as I make videos, as long as I speak publicly or even privately, because I have printed my documents, I will use them when I talk about philosophy with people to present the full picture, the broad view, the map. That's the metaphor that I use. It's the map. There is the territory. The map does not coincide always with the territory, but at least even if the map is partly wrong, partly insufficient, lacking in clarity, it enables to see the view of the totality, and that's a conceptual tool which enable and help to clarify, classify, order one's own thoughts, and to see better, to bring light. So now I will take the time to comment. I will be, in a sense, true to what I have thought for many years, but more specifically for the past few weeks. It's not a sudden change, it's partly a change, but it's the idea that I have to trust myself, not completely because I'm not always reliable, or maybe I am, I don't know, but to trust myself, my own competence. I'm not competent in everything because I improve constantly, so I'm far from having reached a level of competence that I can reach, but I have to assert myself for the good. I have asserted myself maybe for the bad, and maybe this assertion is negative, but I have to trust my ideas, because I've understood recently that the reason why people do not understand what I have to say is because it's way too complex. But I will not compromise on the intellectual requirements, but I will try to find a proper balance between an excess of intellectual standards for the ordinary consciousness and a simplification to the point of stupidity. So I will try to find the proper balance. That's why I will spend, here it's 1 a.m. in the morning, at least 1.5 hours, depending, commenting in an intelligible way what I have understood, how I envision the totality of being at this moment, and I will try to find a proper balance between shedding light, enlightening by making a few comments without going into too much complexity. So I will try to find a proper balance. This is what I've been doing with my universal and singular self. Try to find balance between the universal and the singular. Balance usually is in the middle. Yeah, so I will drink a glass of water that I will appreciate, and then I will begin the commentary. So it's been 29 minutes. Okay. After I have recorded this video, I will go to sleep to find chemical balance within my brain. And then I will probably watch my videos, because at this moment very few people do, and I have no reaction. So as long as I can, I will watch my videos, because I find enlightenment and wisdom and strength even in my videos. I have not been able to watch them all or to rewatch them, but those that I've watched have enabled me to understand more clearly. Yeah, so here is the problem. Here I will speak, the problem is that the idea that I'm trying to share, the idea, it's a logical determination that we find here somewhere. Where is the idea? Here. It's a good idea. The good is the good is here. No, but here, idea in ordinary sense. The view that I want to share is very simple. It's about being, but it's also infinitely complex, and I will not how should I explain? I want to be able, as long as I publish videos, to I will not comment. I will comment systematically, but not thoroughly. In a way, I will go very fast. I mean, relatively fast enough to explain what I'm talking about. But I want to use this as a conceptual frame, as long as I speak publicly or speak at all, because I want to put order. It's not fully order, but it enables to order one's thought and one's view of reality, and it requires time to think, to meditate, to reflect, and I will grant myself this time, because to act completely mindlessly, sometimes to act out of instinct and spontaneity can be good, but to act completely mindlessly is not good. And here what I'm about to say, I don't know consciously exactly what I'm about to say, but I know that the commentary that I will provide of the document that I've been working on, I have made the presentation. Of course it's not very aesthetic, but it's very useful, and the commentary, here I will trust myself a little bit. The commentary that I will provide, I don't know consciously what I'm about to say, but I know that it's enlightening and that it's good. So I will check the frame, and then I will begin my work. I work at night time. I overwork, one might say, but it's for the good of everyone. Because here I'm intelligent enough to understand broadly. I will not make the same mistakes that I have done over and over again. Namely, if I let myself be constantly distracted by all external events, I'm constantly unstable. I have decided recently, it's a switch in my worldview. I didn't think like this before, but it's not a random switch. It's the result of a long process of maturing. This is connected with what I say at the beginning of my videos, now that I improve constantly. I've understood that I have to stabilize myself on a singular level just to be able to speak calmly, to think calmly, and the more stable I am within, eventually it's very difficult because I have conflicting tendency, but the more stable I am within, in my immediate environment, the more I can speak calmly and not be too irrational or too emotional. I have an emotional and irrational aspect. That's the unity partly of female and male psyche within each human. There are quantitative proportions. I will not talk about the metaphysics of the sexes too much, but basically I have, if I want to establish order, which is one of the goals, I have to find order within and to find peace within, because if I'm constantly I will probably, like this morning, I was very moody. I talked about it in the previous video, but I have stabilized because I have followed my own, it's not a plan, it's my own code of ethics all along the day, which has helped me to find stability, which is why in the middle of the night I can speak calmly about logic, nature and Geist, and then I will go to sleep, which will stabilize my mood, and when I wake up I will continue while adapting. It's not rigid formalism, but try to find a proper balance between having principles that I have to obey, that's a piece of it, everyone has to act according to principles, but not to be completely rigid without being open to change. Find the proper balance between acting according to principles and codes of ethics for the good, while finding enough intelligence to adapt to the circumstances. That's the balance between the two, that's the proper measure. The people who have no principle, who wander, not physically, but who move from one position to the next, in terms of emotions, in terms of decisions, etc., which are completely chaotic in the negative sense, they have no stability, it's bad. The people who are too rigid, who are not open to taking into account the change of circumstances, it's bad as well. The proper measure is, from the masculine perspective, is to act according to principles while incorporating knowledge as it comes. That's the proper balance. But enough talked about this. Now I will comment more or less. Do we see? Yeah. Ici. Okay. I will just show the formal presentation. This is logic. The categories of logic. It's not complete. It's not full. It's not thorough. But it's as complete as it can get while being accessible. So here are not all the categories. This is what I intended to do, to present the document not to people who are completely ignorant, but in a simplified way to people who are. Here I talk potentially to everyone, but it is limited in a chronological perspective by the mediation of language, popularity of the video, and also the ability to understand. And here it's quite complex because it's pure philosophy in a way, but I will try to make this as intelligible as it can get. I will not illustrate with countless examples. I intend to do this in my coming videos to illustrate. Really, that's a plan that I had and that I will still implement. But here I will talk broadly in an intermediate level. What is it about? The categories. I present the document. The categories are the building blocks of the mind, the structure of the mind, the boxes that human beings use to structure their relationship with the objective world, with reality. But these are the structures of the mind, which are also found within reality. And the categories are to the mind what the atoms and the molecules are to the physical world, namely with a few hundreds of elements. In the chemical world there are broadly a few hundreds of various atoms. In the natural world, the infinite variety of the physical world is made possible. And with a few, I haven't counted because it's not complete, but with a few dozens of categories, the infinite complexity of the intellectual world, but of the physical world as well, because the physical world is derived from the pure intellect. Here it's a little bit more complex, but basically these are the categories which human, through the medium of language, which is an improper way of expressing categories, it can express emotions, images, metaphors. It's more poetic than pure logic, but the language, the words and the terminology and the vocabulary and language is the clothes of the categories. Namely, the categories are dressed in language, and to undress language means to stumble upon the naked categories. Ah, that's exciting! Yeah. So here are the categories, namely the ordering principle of the mind, and how it's not randomly selected. I've borrowed the structure from the works of Hegel, the encyclopedia, but I will explain how they flow from one another. I will not show the process, but they are derived from one another, so that's a formal presentation, but the process is organic in a sense that it's a self-development, and here I will not comment and explain how each category derives from the other, but simply these are categories which are used daily by every thinking human, independently of his level of intelligence, his level of education, his language, his origin, but simply these determinations that I've just mentioned, more intelligent people, more educated people, they will more often use the terminology, for instance, ground and existence, possibility, necessity, contingency, cause and effect, singular, particular, universal, etc. The terminology will be more often expressed explicitly by people of high intelligence, high education, but the ideas in ordinary sense which are being expressed, they are used constantly by every thinking people. Something, where is something? Something is everywhere. Okay, something. People use this category every day to describe objects. What is this? This is something. Yeah, but everything is something, because the precise definition of a thing from this perspective is precisely to be something. Here, I will not go into too much detail, but here I will comment for a few, as long as it's necessary. What I am talking about. These are all, in a simplified way, all the thought determination, namely the structure of the human mind, which is also the structure of reality. Why begin with logic? Because in order to make the world intelligible, the world is intelligible because it is structured by the categories, but in order to understand the world, one has to use the proper categories, and I will use simple example. Logic, which is the mind of God, the pure intellect, the pure intelligence, but in the beginning, that's not a chronological beginning, but in the beginning there is nothing, which is identical with being, and the intelligence, which is formulated in the rules of logic in a way, and the capacity, the ability to grasp complexity into unity, that's one way of defining intelligence, the ability to grasp the multiplicity, to reduce the multiplicity to unity in a coherent, structured way, to grasp patterns, etc. It develops, it unfolds, and the result are all the logical determinations. So I will briefly comment. Sein, nichts, werden. Being and nothing are the poorest, most abstract determination. It's the absence of any determination, of any qualification. When the question is, what is this? The answer is not it's nothing or it's being, it's something. But something is already a determinate being, a being with a limit which can be qualified. Pure being, pure nothing, nothing can be said about them. That's the void of the Buddhist. Werden. Okay, here I have to correct my document. Werden. It's why is it written in German? Yeah, because the German language is important, because it's a reflection of the German mind. Yeah. So the unity of being and nothing. Here I will speak ordinarily. Produces becoming. Becoming. That's a category that people use in everyday life. I take example, change, modification, transformation, evolution, development. These are words which express ideas in the ordinary sense, but the idea in ordinary sense, which is contained in the terminology and the thoughts about change, becoming, modification, transformation, rise and fall, passing away, coming into being, etc. This is the idea of becoming. And the reason why the world is in constant flux, everything changes constantly, because at the fundamental level, the most basic, the most simple thought is being and nothing, but eventually it's becoming, and everything which derives in the process contains the primordial determination. That's why everything becomes, that's why there is change, the change of seasons, the movement of the planets, growing older, decay, rise and fall, prosper and decline, etc., in all the subsequent fields of the human or the natural world, there is becoming, because it's at the foundation. Yeah, I will not go into too much detail. So, Dasein. Dasein is the unity of being and nothing. The unity of being and nothing in the first moment is becoming, and becoming is unstable, that's why things become. Dasein, it's translated in English by existence, but there are two types of existence, one might say, or there are many kinds of existence. There is the existence in the realm of essence, which is here, and there is existence in the English language, which means Dasein, and they are conceptually distinct, namely, to exist in the realm of essence and to have Dasein are different determinations. I will not go into too much detail, but basically Dasein is stabilized becoming. It's being with a negation, which is Nichtsein, and the negation of being is Bestimmtheit, which means determinacy, which is the limit, the quality. Here it seems very abstract. I try to talk intelligibly for relatively intelligent people. To qualify something is precisely to give a determinacy, to give a limit. What is it? The answer of the question, what is it, means to qualify, to give a Bestimmtheit. The world is structured according to qualities, in a sense that the world is qualified because it has limits, it has boundaries, it has determinations, but also determinacies. And here, this example that I can communicate, UPS, the particular under any given universal are determinacies of the universal, Bestimmtheiten, limitations. So the species of a genus, the example that I took earlier, the universal is fruit, oranges, apples, peaches, strawberries, blueberries, bananas, etc. These are particularization, Bestimmtheiten of the universal. That's how the human mind, but also the structure of reality and the mind of God is structured. Namely, there is Bestimmtheit, which is limitation, qualification. This is how it emerges. This is a category that is used constantly, but people do not use the word determinacy because it's too complex. It's not complex, but it's too, how do you call it, snob? Yeah. But the idea in ordinary sense, the thought determination, that which we call the category, emerges like this. This is then Dasein is opposed to an other, which is the non-being of Dasein, and this other is something else, etwas anders. So by qualifying something, one gives something its being. That's how the category of something and something else, etwas and etwas anders, emerge, and something, here it seems, I can anticipate, it seems completely abstract, but people use the category of something in everyday life, but something precisely because it's at the beginning of the process. This is how something emerges out of pure being and nothing from a strictly formal logical standpoint. If you say about something, all you have to say is that it is something. It's very poor, it's very abstract, it's very undetermined, because something is very poor if it's just something. This pen is something, but it's not just something, it's an object. It's an object made of plastic with a purpose. It has been produced for a specific reason, etc. There are other determinations to give. It's not just something. A pen is much more determined, much more qualified than just something. Yeah. Then, Realität. Reality is something is real, and the concept of reality, the category of reality, emerges in the process, and it has two moments, an sich und sein für anders. Here I will draw because it's important. Here I will speak for myself. Every time that I make a video, a long video on logic, there is some trouble in one way or another. But I will not let myself be distracted because I have interesting things to say. It's not very rigorous, but I explain simply, and the people who take the time to watch, it will last a few dozens of minutes, they will understand a lot. I will not comment systematically every determination. Maybe I should have begun by, no, I will do this now, I will correct in the process. These categories, they are very abstract, very vague, but here the categories which are used more consistently, more they are more people are more aware of them. The categories of quantity, proportions that we find in statistics, in economics with prices, measure, etc., they are here. Positive and negative, identity and difference, cause and effect, whole and parts, singular, particular, universal, judgment, and syllogism, namely reasoning. We find this here in the part about the concept, Begriff, and in essence, and here I began with the most abstract, most simple. I should have shown the view of the totality, but I correct myself during the process. So let us continue. Reality, yeah. Now I will use my reality. People talk about real or true, sometimes they are synonymous. It's a true masterpiece, it's a real work of art. What reality? For real? Are you for real? Reality, people use the word reality constantly, but what does it mean? What does it imply? What does it contain? And what do people unconsciously mean when they say that something is real or not real? Because the importance of studying logic consists in saying that if one understands one fundamental category, fundamental is derived from Grund, that's in the logic of essence, but let us use further categories to retroactively interpret earlier categories. Once a category is understood, all the categories which derive from this, they are understood properly. So for instance, here, reality can be illustrated like this. It's not very rigorous. Something and something else. Something is what it is through its limit. The Bestimmtheit. Grenze is the limit. Endlichkeit means finite. Something is finite because something implies something else and it is connected to something else, and the moment of being comes from here. The moment of being in something is what in German we call an sich, namely in itself. It's the abstraction of being independently of the relation to an other. And here I speak ordinarily. The relation to an other is called Sein für anders, meaning being for another, and reality is the unity of the two moments. Something is real if it is what it is in itself and for another. And here I will not pull out the table board that I showed earlier, but simply in the case of, I will illustrate with the example that I have just here. Virtue signaling on the left, that's there is the exterior, that would be the Sein für anders, I mean that's virtue signaling, but it's not real virtue, or maybe sometimes it is, but in order for virtue to be real, there has to be the two moments, otherwise it's just an appearance, it's just hypocrisy. That's why saying, you are shameful, etc., I am more virtuous than you, are you really virtuous? Do you have the an sich and the Sein für anders? In order to be real, you have to have the both aspects. When something is just, here I use the category something spontaneously. Very smart, the person who designed this system of logic. In order for something to be real, there has to be the two moments. Let's make another example that I have not yet used, but counterfeit money, it looks like money, namely in relation to other, there will be the Sein für andere, that will be the appearance of money. Appearance is a determination of essence, but here I simplify. There will be the Sein für anders, namely for the others, those who get fooled, the fake banknotes would appear to be real, but they would not be real because in itself they are not real money because they are worthless. So in order for money to be real, there has to be the exterior and the interior. Exterior, interior, or determination of essence. But here I simplify. Simply, what it means that once one understands what reality means, a real man is a man who behaves. It's not just a man with the physical body of a man, but a man who acts like a man with his inner determination, confidence, charisma, strength, who can be reassuring, who can be tough as well. That's a real man. A male is not a real man necessarily because he just has the Sein für anders. He's a man for others because of his masculine attributes, but in order to be a real man, he has to have the interior. The two moments, interior, exterior, are further determined. But I just explained that once one has understood what reality is, it makes a lot more sense. Then, limit, Englischkeit means finitude or what is finite, and sollen mean the ought to. Here I will speak what I intended to talk about, namely, the reason. Here I'm in a stable mood. This morning I wasn't, but I explained geopolitics to all the geopoliticians or to all the people who watch this. The reason why there are conflicts. I mean, there are psychological reasons, but the logical reason why there are conflicts, why there have been conflicts between various countries, states, nations, etc., is simply, here I understood this a long time ago, but here I can formulate this more simply, in a way, with more clarity. This explains why I don't understand and I fail to understand others and why they have failed to understand me, because I have been living in the realm of pure abstraction, but pure abstraction, precisely, they are not just an sich, they are also Sein für anders, so in a sense that pure abstraction, they become real. The limit, here let us say it's something and something else. The limit, which is a further determination of Bestimmtheit, is that which separates something from something else. Here is just an illustration. Something is what it is through its limits. And it is differentiated. Difference is here. It's differentiated from something else through its limit. So the limit in logic, in categorical philosophical logic, the limit has the ambiguity. Here it's very serious because it explains a lot. As the ambiguity of the limit is that which gives something its being. In ordinary language, it means that something is what it is through its limit. It's not necessarily geographical. It can be qualitative. This is a pen. This is not a glass. The limit of the pen is the quality, not good or bad, but in the sense of qualify what is it. It's not a glass. It's a pen. Yeah, the limit is that which gives something its being, but also its non-being. That's why the limit is like becoming or Dasein or something. It's contradictory because it is what it is and what it is not at the same time. In ordinary language, the limit gives being and non-being to something. So, being and non-being, this would be Sein und Nichts. The limit is ambiguous and unstable and contradictory because it gives being and non-being at the same time. So it is the unity of being and nothing, or being and non-being, is becoming. That's why limits become, which in ordinary language means that's why limits evolve and change. That's why in geopolitics, that's why there is imperialism. In the sense, that's very serious because German metaphysics explains the entire history of world geopolitics very simply. How long has it been now? A few. Okay, it's been 1 hour, but yeah, I've explained the entire history of geopolitics because limits are contradictory. That's why they do not remain what they are, but why they become. And in the realm of human consciousness, the reason why there are change of limits in the realm of geopolitics can be search for resources, for economic dominance, demographic displacements, etc. There are various reasons in the realm of nature or Geist, but in the realm of logic, it's simply because a limit is contradictory. And it can be negated on the outside or on the inside, namely the will to incorporate the other within oneself, which is called mass immigration. It's an attempt to transcend the limits and to restore the unity, to abolish the divide. That's why things, something, not some things, but things in the sense of something is finite because it has a limit, it has an other which is not itself. That's why also, because the limit is contradictory, something has to change, to evolve, to overcome the limit, to transcend itself. That's the Sollen, which in English would be the ought to. That's why it's logically structured that something finite has to go beyond itself for logical reasons. That is what we call the infinite. The infinite, as opposed to the finite, these are how these categories emerge. The infinite is that which is itself in the other, namely when something finds itself in its other, the other is not something else, but it is an other which has been negated, not as being suppressed, but being recognized as the same, although being the other, and that's an infinite relation to self. That's what we call für sich sein, when the other becomes the self. I will not delve too much into für sich sein, but I will explain very simply the concept of freedom, philosophical freedom. To be free means to be at home, in a way, in the other. Here I will not talk about geopolitics, not in this video, because I want to simply express the totality. That's what I intended to do, and I will not modify. It's not a stubbornness, it's simply being faithful to what I intended to do. Für sich sein means to be oneself in the other, namely not to try to escape from the other, but to recognize the other, here in logical category, that's something else, as another self, and to find oneself into the other means to be in relation to oneself, and this is what is called freedom. That's why an aspect, maybe the negative aspect of freedom, is that one has to accept the other as being part of the self, and someone who refuses the other as being completely alien cannot be free, because he will attempt to escape from the other, but he will be followed by the other wherever he goes. That's why fleeing is useless, and to be really free, one has to be at home everywhere and anywhere, even in unpleasant places. I say this for myself, but I explain this for others. To be free means to be free to go wherever without fear. I don't know, but without while accepting that the other is a part of the self. This is what to live freely means. And when the other and the self are the same, they are one, and this is how the concept and the category of unity emerges. One and many. People use these categories daily, one and many. This is how they emerge. When something and something else are the same, they are one. But there is the negative, in a sense of the determinacy, the limit, the finite aspect which has been transcended, which is still present nonetheless. And when the one, here I will use again, when the one negates itself because of the becoming and the nothing and the negativity that it contains, when the one negates itself, it produces itself, because there is nothing else to produce, because something else is the same thing, which is what has brought about the concept of one. Here, that's a speculative joke for highly trained German metaphysicians. The one, by negating itself, produces itself, but a one, which is another, we call this multiplicity, or the many. That's how multiplicity comes out of the concept of unity. Here it's not very rigorously demonstrated. It's not very, maybe it's not very convincing, but the reason why there is unity and multiplicity, it's logically determined, and that's the repulsion of the one, the negation of the one, the self-repelling process of the one, which brings about another one, but another one. We have a name for this. We call this many. When there are not just one, but other ones, we call this a multiplicity, manifold, etc. The repulsion brings about other ones, and the other ones who seek to establish identity. It's not a conscious process in the realm of pure categories, but simply the ones. They are all one because they all emerge out of the one, and they are all in the moment of being, which is relation to self. They seek to unite in a way, and that is attraction. That's why attraction and repulsion are conceptually united. That's why people are attracted by what they find repulsive in the realm of psychology sometimes. And these are determinations of the physical world. Attraction and repulsion on an electromagnetic level. We find this, which is the structure of the physical world, of the atoms and the molecule and the interactions. They are derived by attractive and repulsive forces in electromagnetism. So that's how quantity emerges out of quality, namely quantity is the realm of multiplicity. And here we have Größe, which is magnitude as it is translated in English, and it can be continuous or discrete. I will not comment rigorously, but basically this is an illustration of continuity, which is the unity. It's one but many. So the categories of unity and multiplicity, it's one continuum with many divisions, which are called discrete units, and whatever is continuous can be discretely separated. In the question of race, on the left, usually they say that there is one race, the human race. On the right, they say no, there are various races. Here, one and various. The one is the moment of continuity, and the moment of there are various races or ethnic groups is the moment of discretion. Namely, it has to be separated in discrete units. In the realm of intelligence, there is a continuum of IQ distribution. Where's the bell curve? Yeah. The distribution of IQ is continuous, namely from the lowest level to the highest level. There's a continuity from in a society where the median is 100. From let's say 75 to 125, where the majority, the tremendous majority, finds itself, there is a continuum, but it can be discretely separated. Namely, there is 92, 93, 94, 95, 105, 106, 107, etc. These are discrete separation, but there's a continuum. Yeah, this is how continuity and discretion emerge. Then quantum is what we call quantity in ordinary language. This is how the numbers emerge from the process. There are numbers everywhere, and it is said in the modern era that nature is mathematically determined. But where do numbers come from? They come from the mind of God. That's why God is a mathematician. Unity and units, arithmetic. Here I will not explain how it works, but this is how arithmetic emerges out of the process of logic, namely addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, to elevate to power and to square roots. This is how arithmetic, I will not here logically demonstrate, but this is how we have quantity, quantum number, and the various kinds of arithmetic. This is how they emerge. People, mathematics and mathematicians, they begin with the number and the various arithmetic and eventually geometric and algebraic determination, but they do not explain where does it come from. The formal presentation of the totality shows the process in a rigorous way, and here it's simply what people use in most people, they use numbers to relate to the world. They quantify their relationship to the world. This pen can be measured, length, width, size, price. The colors, they can be quantified because these are determinations of the continuous electromagnetic spectrum, etc., etc. This is an example. Then, grad means grade or degree. Intensity and extension. What is intense is extended. Profound ideas, like the religious teachers or the great scientists have profound ideas or elevated thoughts, and they have to become extended because they are conceptually united. It's not always the case chronologically, but it's logical. What is intense has to become extended. Let us talk positive. An attractive woman who is considered beautiful or hot, she will be extended in a sense that she will have a lot of suitors, a lot of guys who will try to seduce her. That's the good aspect. An intensive problem of high intensity, it has to extend because it's logically determined. So, yeah. How to solve extensive problems with intensive thoughts. That's what I've been working on. Here we have the infinite quantitative progress, because quantity is contradictory, because it always goes out of itself. So here it's why there is an infinite possibility of increasing quantity. I will not go into full detail, I just explained, and to illustrate with example, in the realm of psychology, that which we call greed, lust, all how do you call this? All the sins are excessive, quantitative excesses of ambition. It's people who always want more. They are quantitatively determined. The three examples that I can think of: transhumanism. It's an attempt to quantitatively improve technologically human beings. It's an infinite progress, as envisioned. Eugenics, it's an unconscious attempt to quantitatively increase humans through breeding processes. Space exploration, it's an attempt to go always further and further in space to explore other planets, other systems, other galaxies, etc. And capitalism, what people blame on capitalism is greed. It's the will to always accumulate more money. But money, space, the quantitative determination of intelligence, etc., these are precisely quantitative, and quantity in its very concept is the fact of always going outside of itself, always seeking to expand, to extend and to expand, because it has becoming within, namely it's contradictory, it has to always go beyond. And that's why there is a constant expansion. That's why space expands because of repulsion, the physicists would agree, and also because of the infinite quantitative progress, namely the universe in the official storyline is expanding because space is a determination of quantity, space is continuous, etc. So that's just explained that we find these categories in the pure abstraction of the mind of God, but they are found at all layers of the natural, psychological, economic, political world, in a sense that the psyche of humans is quantitatively determined. And most of the sins, it's not that most of the sins are quantitative excesses, but most of the quantitative excesses are sins in a sense that they trespass the proper measure, which is here mass is the measure, and the quantitative verhältnis is the quantitative relationship, namely percentages, fractions, ratios. These are a relationship of a quantity to another, a quantum to another, and they have their meaning in their reciprocal interaction. Namely, 75%, there is 75 and 100, and the value, which is also 3/4. These are different ways of expressing the same quantitative verhältnis. We find quantitative proportions daily in the news, in books, in people, in way of people expressing themselves. And proportion is another way for quantitative Verhältnis, quantitative relationship. The specific quantum and the rule. The rule is a given quantitative determination, namely the rules of politeness, the rules of poetry, the rules of circulation of cars, etc. It's qualitatively determined, but also quantitatively. The recipe for cooking, there is a certain proportion of flour, sugar, etc., etc. There has to be rules have to be followed in classical poetry. The verses has to have the specific quantitative determination of syllables and rhythm, etc. Music, etc. Oh, in the judicial system, crimes and have to have their proper punishment, namely there's a relationship between the intensity of the crime and the intensity or the extension of the punishment, and that's a rule, that's the rule of law. And to find the proper rule is always difficult, that's to find a proper balance, to find a proper measure, and this is how the concept of measure and the excesses of measure come into being, yeah. Very funny, these German metaphysicians sometimes. More seriously, measure, what is it quantitatively? Here, that's not a very efficient way, but a measure is, I should have begun with this, but I will do this. But basically, quality is that which gives being its being. Something is what it is for its quality. Quantity, on the contrary, is indifferent to being, namely the quantity of something can change, something remains what it is. To a certain extent, here the illustration, we have, let us say it is something is what it is, the measure can change to a certain extent, we can add or suppress a quantitative amount, reduce, etc., but only within a certain limit, and the quantitative limit which gives something its quality is that which is called the measure. You drink too much alcohol, you become drunk. Marginal utility, I've read this recently in good American books about economics. Marginal utility is the jargon of the economists to say that if you drink 1 glass of water, that's good in the sense, qualitatively, here it's quality in the sense that it answers a need, namely thirst. You drink 2, it's good. 3, good. 4, okay. 5, well. 6, it becomes a little bit too much, it becomes unpleasant. When the quantitative change, the more you add the consumption of a certain good, at first it's really good in the sense of pleasure or satisfaction, but the more you add quantities and numbers of the same good in a given amount of time, the utility, namely the satisfaction that you get, is being reduced because the quality changes. You eat one piece of bread. If you are hungry, that's good. You eat 2, that's great. 3, etc. But you eat 5, 6, 7, it becomes too much. It becomes repulsive. You might be tempted to vomit because you have had too much. That's a change of measure. What was satisfying becomes unpleasant. What is satisfying is attractive. What is unpleasant is repulsive. If you change the measure, you change the quantity, but the quality changes as well. That's why things have to be measured. You have to find the proper balance. I've tried, and I'm trying unconsciously, but here I'm not quantifying, but to find the proper balance, the proper measure between accessibility and intelligibility, but I know it's already way too complex. But precisely, I intend to make videos where I make things popular. Popular means extension. A good teacher, where is extension and intensity? A good teacher, he has an intensive talent, he can share his ideas in a widespread way, in a convincing way, because he has found the proper recipe, that would be the rule, to make his ideas extensive, by being intensive in his work ethic. I will work hard, I have worked hard, but I will nonetheless go to sleep once I have finished commenting. And yeah, I've explained the logic of being. Now I will, how long has it been? Because I intend to introduce, okay, it's been 1 hour and 20 minutes. I will not do this for every category. I will just here mention the categories. The passage from being to essence, here it's a little bit complex, but basically, the measure is what it is because it's relation to the trespassing of the measure, to the excess. So the excess is the measure of the measure, and the measure is the measure of the excess. But by giving the measure, you give the excess. So measure has its being in its other, and the relation to self in the other through the mediation with itself, here that's a complex, although very simplified German terminology. This is what we call the essence. The being is immediate. I'm looking at the screen right here. The being is immediate. Essence is relation. That's why the beginning is that when we talk about the essence in ordinary language, it means what is important, what is essential in this book, namely what is important. I can answer the question because I've read the book a few days ago, only the essential aspect, but precisely this book is very well structured, very intelligent, because at the beginning of each chapter there is a summary of the ideas which are being developed in the chapter, so there is a quantitative amount of knowledge which is being very intense, in a sense that most of the knowledge is compartmentalized in the beginning of the chapter. So Charles Murray says somewhere, for those who are interested just in the theoretical aspect, read the beginning of each chapter, everything is summarized, and then if you want more detailed, etc., read the full chapters, of course. That's very intelligent because it enables to skip through the book to avoid all the empirical data, there are graphs, etc., but it's simply to get the essential, the most important, but precisely the essence is what it is, only in relation to the unessential, namely this book, and every book is what it is, because there is not just the summary, the introduction, and the conclusion, there is the totality, whole and parts. A book is a whole with parts, that would be the chapters, and the essence, if it is opposed to what is unessential, it's only partial. The truth of a book is the totality, namely the unessential. When reading the bell curve, one doesn't need to learn by heart all the statistics because they are outdated, so they are unessential, but the book wouldn't be what it is if it hadn't the unessential part. That's, yeah. But the determination of essence, I will not comment thoroughly as I did with being. There is identity and difference. Identity is relation to self, that's the moment of being. Difference is negation, that's the moment of nothing. And they are conceptually united because in order to identify, to find oneself, identity is relation to self, but relation presupposes that there is another, which is different. So in order for identity to re-establish itself or to establish itself, there has to be unity with what is different. And I will not show the process, this is at the beginning of the video. The process of spirit consists in re-establishing self-identity by differentiating oneself from the other. Yeah, but the other is the self, that's the identity of identity and difference. Then this is how the concept of comparison, when there are differences, we compare, and things, if they are identical in the realm of comparison, they are equal. If they are different, they are unequal. So the categories which are used mostly in politics and economics, this is how they derived from the logical process. This is how equality and inequality emerge out of the mind of God. I do not show the process, but I simply explain. If people have watched this up until now, they probably understand. This is how categories which are being used daily are used, but are the people aware where these categories come from? No. And do they use these categories rigorously? No. So equality, inequality, it's the couple of identity, difference, being and nothing, which in the realm of essence is positive and negative. They are conceptually united at the yin and yang, up and down, left and right, and all the previous determination that I've showed on the process of spirit, namely, they are conceptually united. One cannot be thought of without the other, because one is what it is to the extent that it is not the other, but because it is it has its identity through its differentiation from the other. The other is a moment of itself, in a way. Yeah, that's why they are united. In ordinary language, let's talk about religion. Christ and Antichrist. Antichrist is the negative of Christ. This is a religious image to explain logical determination. This is an opposition, a polarity that we find in electromagnetism. The North Pole and the South Pole, plus and minus, positive and negative electric charges. We find this at all levels of the natural world. Ground and existence, each determination in the realm of essence is the ground, the foundation of the other. So each determination, which are dual and reciprocally determining one another, each one exists because of the other. It has its being in the other, but a being which has its being in the other, we call this existence. So existence is the moment of identity in the realm of essence. All the things which exist, they have a reason for being, a ground, and the ground and the reason for being, these are other words for cause that we find here. So the categories which are used, reason for being, the foundation, the cause, etc., this is how they emerge. Then we have a thing and its property, matter and form, the apparition, which is Erscheinung, namely, here I will not comment systematically because this is just a presentation. I will illustrate as long as I can illustrate. Form and content. Each book has a given content. The form is the structure. It can be either the structure, the various chapters, etc., or the style. Various authors with various talents, they can speak about the same topic, that would be the content, with a different style, using different methods, but they talk about the same thing, das Ding, in various ways. The form, if it is the style or the structure, is different, but the content is the same. There are various ways of talking about logic, or about anything. Anything, thing is something, yeah. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. I will go to sleep before 3 a.m. because this is when Slim Shady wakes up, 3 a.m. in the morning, Eminem, etc. That's a joke. But form and content and the law, yeah. The phenomena in the natural world, namely the physical phenomena, the presence of the physical world, is determined by laws, and this is how the notion of law emerge in the realm of logic. Namely, every scientist knows that the phenomena, precisely, they are an apparition, and what is being manifested obeys to a certain set of laws, and what is being manifested in the physical, chemical, biological world is a force, what the physicists call interaction, the four fundamental interactions, electromagnetism, weak and strong interactions, and gravity, which is not strictly speaking a force, it's a curvature of space-time, but a force in physics, and also in chemistry, biology, psychology, economics, exteriorizes itself, and here, that's the connection. Just to take an example, the Americans, they work very hard, these Americans, they are very intensive, they produce they used to, they still do, some of them, but the Americans are renowned for working hard, that intensive work, and it becomes extended in the realm of economic prosperity and economic conquest of markets. That's the realm of quantity. In the realm of essence, that's the exteriorization of a force. It can be the will, the intelligence, the talent. That in the realm of psychology, someone who is talented exteriorizes itself. We do not use the word force, but a talented artist, he exteriorizes his talent, his force, in a way, but it's not the word that is used, but that's the idea. And yeah, here we have Verhältnis, so relationship is not the proper word. The Verhältnis is a conceptual unity of determinations, a whole and its parts. Here it's very important because to think properly, that's what I said, part of my ethics consists in studying a little bit of logic every day just to think properly, namely, in order to think about anything, any topic, one has to think about the topic in its totality, namely to see all the parts. Let's make a joke. I'm in a mood to make a joke. Lovers, they know that they have to when you love someone, you love all the parts about this person. I know that the Pussycat Dolls, they made a song, I hate this part. There are parts I would prefer not to, but if it's part of the whole is so great that I will take even the bad parts. That's here I will be a little bit more serious. But in marriage, when people get married, they have to accept the totality of common life with the good parts and the bad parts. Yeah. But more seriously, I mean it's serious, but just the category of whole and parts, it's very simple, but when one thinks that in order to think properly about any topic, one has to see the full picture, all the parts. It's just basic, rigorous. To read a book, one has to read all the chapters. To think about a country in a historical perspective, one has to see the entire history of the country. When one thinks about a society, one has to see the full picture, the full view. When one thinks or anything, it has to be done holistically. The whole has, with all its parts, has to be taken into account. And here, the connection between the logic of essence and the logic of the concept is that the whole and the parts in the realm of the concept, this is the universal and the particularization. Let us take the example of race. The human race, that would be the whole of mankind, and the parts would be the particularization, the various ethnic groups. Yeah, that's just an illustration. So we find the same categories in a more determined, more specified way throughout the process. Then force exteriorization, and that's how the categories of inner and outer emerge, innerus and äußeres, inside and outside, which is already an sich und sein für anders in a way. The force has to exteriorize itself. What is inner has to exteriorize itself, to make itself outer. It can be for good or bad. When a person suffers inwardly, he or she exteriorizes suffering. It can be transcended through artistic expression. This is what Eminem and Lady Gaga do very well. They express in some of their songs an inner torment, and their way of exteriorizing this torment is through artistic expression. It can also be positive. It can be negative, it can be positive. When people are confident, satisfied, happy, they radiate positive vibes. They exteriorize their inner happiness or their inner peace or their inner order. And here I talk to myself. What I've been attempting to do, that's my ethics that I've been talking about in the previous video and briefly in this video, is to try to fix my inner side, my soul, my psychological problems, psychiatric problems, psychoanalytical problems, because the inner and the outer, they are partly connected. That's why clean your room, it's such a good piece of advice, because if the inner, namely the will to order one's own immediate environment, if the inner is clear, people who listen to Jordan Peterson when he says good pieces of advice, they will exteriorize by cleaning their outer environment, but then it's gradual in the sense that if the room is clean, then the broader environment, the more extended environment, can be cleaned as well. Someone who is at peace or in tranquility within his soul and his mind, he will radiate order in his immediate environment and eventually in broader and broader fields of, not fields, in broader and broader layers. Yeah, that's why here it's really important. Here I will talk as seriously as I can. When a country has inner problems, economic, demographic, social, they have a tendency to exteriorize. Here in politics, it is not that China, Russia, but the Western world, they have inner problems. That's why there is a tendency toward exteriorizing this through conflict, because if the inner is unstable, unbalanced, problematic, it will exteriorize itself. That's why I have been focusing on psychology, because in order to help cure universal problems, one has to first cure one's own problem, because if someone is imbalanced within, he will produce imbalance and chaos and disorder without or outside. But just focusing on the inner is not sufficient. Just focusing on the outer is not enough either. There has to be a proper balance, a mutual reciprocal interaction, trying to solve both problems. And the concept of Wirklichkeit, which is actuality, that's a logical determination, which precisely when the inner and the outer coincide, they become actual, they become real, not in the sense of Realität, but in the highest sense, actuality, namely what is wirklich contains all the previous determination. And reality with an sich und sein für anders is Wirklichkeit with inner and outer. It's not very rigorous, but that's how it works. Then, possibility, necessity, contingency, these are categories in the table of categories of Kant. How when people talk about is it possible, it's necessary, it's contingent, it could be otherwise, it's connected to actuality. What is wirklich is possible because it is wirklich, it is necessary because it is wirklich, and if something else is possible, it means that that which is contingent because it could be otherwise. Here it's a little bit abstract, but yeah. In order for something to occur, the conditions have to be met. Yeah. Then we have substance and accidents. The whole and the parts in a further process, it's the substance and its accidents. And the totality are all the accidents, all the parts. Here it's philosophical jargon. I have showed the full process in its simplified aspect of the movement of spirit, and all the accidents, all the parts, they constitute the whole and the substantial revelation of spirit in a way. Cause and effect. The effect is the exteriorization of the cause, which would be the force, but they reciprocally determine one another. Action, reaction. This is what people call karma in a Buddhist a religious view, or action reaction in Newtonian physics. Yeah, that's why it's good to send positive vibes, not of hypocrisy. If it's just fake positivity, that would be sein für anders without an sich, or äußeres without inneres, that would be hypocrisy, namely to be fake, but to spread positive vibe or negative, it brings about a reaction. But in order to be genuine, authentic, there has to be a coincidence. The inner and the outer have to coincide, and that's why in order to be positive outwardly, one has to be positive inwardly. That's why happy people, they resonate and they radiate positive vibe, and unhappy people, they resonate negative vibe. That's why people, when they suffer, they become negative, and when they receive negativity, they suffer. That's Wechselwirkung, mutual reciprocal determination. When people feel good, they resonate positive vibe. That's why I started making this video many hours ago, because I was in a stable mood, but I have violent mood shifts. But now I'm in a stable mood, and I will try to remain stable. And my routine, my daily routine to remain as stable as possible is to sleep and to do all the aforementioned steps, to the extent of my possibility. And when I do this, I become more stable, which enables to exteriorize order, one might say. Yeah. I will drink a glass of water. Yeah. and I will talk. That's my break, my pause. I will talk. I have been talking alone for months in my apartment or in front of my computer. I have developed a worldview. I have exteriorized, I will not show the picture, I have exteriorized my thoughts depending on my reaction. I have exteriorized my thoughts depending on my reaction to the external world, my emotions, my thoughts, my wisdom or lack of wisdom. But wisdom is that which you're supposed to acquire. If I were born wise, what would be the point of being here? I don't know. But what I mean is, I have exteriorized my thoughts for months. I've talked to myself, not as an insane person, but I have talked alone in my apartment. And I've understood that I've come to a moment where I have to. It's not that I have to, it's that my thoughts have to become public. They already are public, but they have to become widespread eventually. And I've understood, here I will laugh, because people will get parts of my process, but not the whole, so there will be misunderstanding, because not everyone will receive the same amount of information because of quantitative limitation of access to information, but also quantitative limitation of knowledge, consciousness, intelligence, culture, etc., etc. And that's why here I will be serious and honest. That's why I've spent, and I'm spending a lot of time trying to present the totality, because as long as I publish videos publicly, I will briefly show at least the view. Here I take the time. I've taken the time. It's many hours now. I've been doing this for almost 4 or 5 hours to show the view of the totality, because this is I want, and I will not say, oh, maybe I'm wrong, because here I know that I'm right. I have an inner certainty that whenever people communicate, they have to express. That's not what I intend to do in this video or even in the previous, but as long as I publish video, at least to show the broad view of what I understand, what I know, what I don't know, and what I don't understand, because they are connected, because what I understand is something, what I don't understand is something else. No, but more seriously, to show the view of the totality. What is your worldview? What do you understand? What do you know? What don't you know? And I have been frustrated against, I mean, not consciously, but how should I explain it? I have experienced frustration against everyone else, because when people talk, we do not know who they are, what they talk about, where do they talk from. If I blame frustration onto other, if I exteriorize negativity, there is reaction, that's karma, as they call this. So I have decided, instead of being frustrated or blaming others, instead of blaming the outer, I will work on the inner, and this is what has motivated my will to first to structure these documents. It's partly inspiration from the works of Hegel, it's partly my own work. Here, a song that I've been listening to, Eminem, this is my work and my sweat and tears, don't push me, etc. Because action, reaction, if you push, here it's Newtonian physics, pushing, reaction, counter. Very intelligent, these Anglo-Saxons. More seriously. This is the result of months, years of work. It has not always been very intense, but over the past few months it has been intense. I have decided that when I'm dishonest, I still do this, but I will blame others or judge others if I can do better. If I can do or if I can do what they do better, or not do what I consider negative, not do it myself. So I've decided to trust my inner self partly, and what I want is when people communicate that they show their worldview as briefly as possible. Here it's not brief, it's a commentary, but I will, as long as I publish videos tomorrow or in the coming day, I will use this as a formal presentation. Then there's the philosophy of nature and the philosophy of Geist as a presentation, just to show what I understand, even if it's vague, just to give context, to give a formal structure. Because, yeah, that's my pause. I grant myself a few minutes. I drink water and I talk during my pause. I will not ask for a minimum wage because I know that it's counterproductive economically. I work for free. Freedom, für sich sein, relation to self in the other. If I enlighten the other, I enlighten myself. If I darken the other, positive and negative, light and dark. Here it's kind of obscure. Obscure doesn't mean dark. It's obscure, but I try to enlighten the obscurity. It's not my conscious intention. I mean, it's not a lecture on logic, but it's trying to share in a very simplified way determination that people with above average IQ can understand if they take the motivation and the intelligence. But of course, for a person who has never heard about logic, speculative logic, philosophy, I know that it's completely unintelligible, but I have plans to make thoughts intelligible, and I would use this as a working document. So what was I saying? Yeah, when people talk publicly, they should. It's not. I don't say that they should, but that's what I will do as long as I have to. I have the documents printed for myself. Local craftsmen. Encouraging local businesses is good. It stimulates local autonomy and prosperity. Yeah, but by showing the formal view, the formal worldview I'm not saying that it's not very rigorous, but it's a beginning, and the same goes for the nature and Geist that I will show later, but it enables to situate what one knows. Because here I'm in a stable mood, but this morning, which was actually yesterday morning, strictly speaking, I became insane, like it has happened many times over the past few months, because I put in a lot of, partly it's immaturity, but partly it's also despair, because I've put countless hours of work. It's not that I want my work to be acknowledged. No, it's simply I want. Partly I do. I would lie if I say otherwise. But if I said otherwise, but it's simply not to be acknowledged for its value, but to be acknowledged for its existence. And I have failed to attain any sort of quantitative, extensive success when talking more or less seriously, which is I'm doing with this video. I'm more or less serious, not very rigorous, but it's partly serious. It's not completely improvised as some of my other videos. But I have experienced tremendous frustration yesterday morning because I failed to attract any kind of interest, although I talk about God and about the conceptual structure of being. And I have decided to share the view, that's my pause, that's why I talk, to share the view of the totality at the beginning of each of my videos, so that people might see what I see, even if it's formal, even if it's vague, just so that when others, I know that there are others, when they watch my video, they say, okay, maybe he knows a lot, maybe some of the things that he says are worth taking seriously. Because here I will be honest with myself, because I know this is true, but with others as well, I have suffered from a lack of recognition. And I have misunderstood. That's partly my fault, but I have come to a point where I will cease to apologize for everything, because it has partly been my fault of a lack of disconnection, a lack of understanding due to disconnection from reality. This is connected with UPS, focusing on my singular self over the past couple of weeks in a more intensive fashion. It can be thought to be selfish, but actually it has helped me tremendously, because I have understood by encountering ordinary people while I have failed to communicate, and encountering ordinary reality has helped me clarify my metaphysical worldview and to complement, to find more stability. So it has been very useful. Just talking to ordinary people has been very useful. And I am thankful and grateful for that, because they have taught me a lot, and they still do. And not just on an empirical level, singular level, but also on a universal level, because it helped me connect my singularity with the universal. And some of the lessons that I have learned is that finding stability and balance within oneself is important at all levels. Yeah, that's the end of my pause. Go back to work. Okay, 1 hour and 50 minutes. Okay, do. We don't see the category. Oh, it's not important. If I am competent, like an American ought to be, like Americans most of the time overwhelmingly are, I'm trying to become my own American by becoming competent and responsible and partly competitive, but competent mostly. My explanations were clear enough whether or not one saw, but these are the categories. Okay, so now I will briefly talk about the logic of the concept. So the idea, here I will just take a... Do we see? The logic of the concept. So here I will just make a brief comment. For myself. Do not watch, I talk for myself. No one watches my video anyway, so I will just talk for myself. What I have understood, it's not recent, here it's continuity and discretion, it's a continuous process with discrete moments, but what I've finally understood recently is that I genuinely got deceived, on a conscious level, got deceived at some moments by losing myself, while finding myself as well. I lost myself and I found myself at the same time. That's very Hegelian. In a realm of pure abstractions, but it's not disconnected from what people call reality. And here I'm not in the mood to make jokes. I have studied pure logic for months and years, and that's the Ansicht. That's not real in the sense that there's just the moment of Ansicht, and there's not the Sein für anders, which would be connection to the what people call the real world. But here I will be serious. I will be serious. Do we see Ansicht, Sein für anders? Yeah. I will be serious. Reality is Ansicht, Sein für anders. There have to be the two moments. People, when they say that philosophy is useless, I've never empirically heard it, but I know that there are many Anglo-Saxons who think that it's useless. But ordinary people, they think that it's not all of them, that's a quantitative difference, but there's a proportion of people with no education. Here that's not derogatory. On a formal level, I have no education either, but people who have not had any education, and I belong to them. I'm with the people! That's a joke. No, but seriously. People who do not understand philosophy formally, they think that speculation, and here it's not the case only with people with a lack of education, it can also be the case with people highly educated, but in economics or physics. The typical Anglo-Saxon, here it's partly derogatory, not completely, but the many people who think they are very competent in their field, they have a high intelligence, a high diploma, a degree is a grade. That's the same root, but it's a quantitative determination which qualifies. You are qualified as a scientist, as a lawyer, as a banker, as a CEO if you have had a quantitative amount of years of study. So a grade is a degree, it's just an illustration. Yeah, but there are people either because of lack of education or because of lack of I would say lack of intelligence for the highly educated who fail to value the value of philosophy. They think that philosophy is pure abstraction. Either it's just formalism, that would just be Sein für Anders but with no real content, or it's purely disconnected, that's the realm of ideas of Plato, it has no interest whatsoever. But precisely what I have understood by encountering ordinary people is that philosophy is real in a sense that my losing myself in pure abstraction for months and years, it has disconnected me from reality, because here in ordinary language that would mean I only studied the Ansicht and not the Sein für Anders, namely my failure to connect with the outer world or to communicate. That's why it was not. That's why I was disconnected from reality. But here I talk to myself, or now I explain myself what I am partly for others, without the religious connotations or even the philosophical symbolism, but what I am as an individual. I lost myself while also finding myself in the realm of pure abstraction, and now I have come back down to earth, not geographically in a sense that I never elevated myself physically, although electromagnetism teaches us that we are floating above the ground because there is electromagnetic repulsion between the atoms of our shoes or our feet and the atoms of the ground. Not the Grund, but the ground. Yeah, so we are floating literally above above the ground. It has always been the case, but only modern science, predominantly Anglo-Saxon, teaches us that. Yeah, what was I saying? I have come back down to earth, come into contact with reality, because I have tied my Ansicht with the Sein für Anders, namely I'm in the process of making my philosophical view real by connecting very abstract concepts with ordinary example, but the purpose is not just to illustrate, the purpose is to think thoroughly and seriously. Namely, I will just here take an example. Psychological problems, psychiatric problems. When one understands that unity and multiplicity, one and many, they are conceptually united, the problems of multiple personalities, they become understood from a logical standpoint, and eventually this is the formal presentation, simplified presentation of the mind of God. So the people who suffer from multiple personalities, they are partly logically determined. When one understands this, it partly appeases the suffering. Bipolar disorders, that's positive and negative. These are just examples in the realm of psychiatry, but it works for many things, just whole and parts. It's just a methodological, the purpose of logic is not just to have methodology, it's one of the byproducts, one of the positive exteriorization of the force of logic, is that it can have many uses, but basically when anyone thinks about any topic seriously, one has to envision the totality and all its parts. And by studying logic, it enables to think properly and to here I talk to ordinary people, to help oneself and others. That's really good to study logic. It sheds light, it can be a joy for the intellect, but it can also be useful for practical action. Practical action means exteriorization of an inner determination of the will. To act outwardly means to have an inner determination and to exteriorize this through one's behavior for the good. This is the importance of logic, and in a sense, the way I envision my own process as an individual is that I am coming down to earth by connecting my very complex metaphysical view with ordinary reality. And here I'm serious with myself, with others. The idea that the inner and the outer are connected, the whole and the parts, the force and the exteriorization. That's just an example. It has helped me that measure is quantitatively determined. There has to be a rule with the proper balance, the proper equilibrium, etc. It has helped me to balance my days, to to cure and heal my soul. The soul is not just the inner, it's partly the body as well, but to cure my inner psyche, because in order to exteriorize, I wouldn't say goodness, but simply stability, order, clarity, and peace, eventually, at least in some aspects, there has to be inner clarity, inner order, inner peace. Someone who is constantly being tormented inwardly, which I have been, and I still am tormented within, but to appease the inner torment, or at least to identify the inner torment, is the first step towards healing. That's why using the proper words, which are expression of categories, to use the proper words, to give them the proper meaning, is the first step toward identifying the problem and eventually curing the problem. I have understood this. Here I'm talking to myself. I have to solve my own problems. I have attempted to solve the problems of the whole world in various ways. I have failed. Maybe I've probably made things worse, but now I've understood that I do not have to go completely in the opposite direction by completely ignoring the outside, but precisely I try to balance the two here. It's as serious as it can get. A balance. I give Mr. Peterson, I'm your competitive challenger in the realm of ethics, at least for now, for the good maybe. Rules for life includes finding the proper measure. Of course, what is the proper measure? It's partly a process of trial and errors. Too much sleep, that's not good. Not enough sleep, that's not good. Too much time focused on talking to people in the street, that's not good. Not enough, that's not good either. Too much time, videos, if they are too long, that's not good enough. If they are not long enough, that's not good enough either. But then what is the purpose? Is it to be quantitatively successful, or is it just to establish the fundamental explanation? The purpose of the previous video and this video is to find the proper balance of clarity, intelligibility, and presentation of the totality. I do not seek consciously to make as many quantitative success as possible. I have plans to do this in other way, but here I seek to establish the fundamental, the basics. Whatever exists comes out of the ground, and if the ground are solid, here it's not my most solid attempt, but if the foundation are firm and solid, whatever comes out of the foundation, whatever comes into existence, will be solid as well. These are just examples. I will just, I will come on the logic of the concept. I'll make Okay, so the logic of the concept is that which is called logic in ordinary sense of the word. Maybe I should have begun with this explanation, but here we have UPS, the whole and the part, the substance and its accidents in the realm of the concept. I will not explain the transition, but basically the concept is one. Every human being is made in the image of the concept, which is in the image of God. That's the logical, metaphysical explanation for the beginning of the Bible. God made man in his own image. I simplify, but basically I should have begun with this maybe, but that's why I don't know who understands what, who will watch when. That's why I've stopped caring about trying to anticipate everything. That would be focused completely on the outer, and I would rather focus on the inner. I do my thing and its properties. I'm not in a mood to make it, though. I do my thing, namely I express myself with what I consider to be accessible, intelligible. If it's too complicated or not interesting enough, I will try harder, better, faster, stronger, but I will not compromise on a minimum of intellectual rigor. And so what is singular is concrete, what is universal is abstract. Genus and species, that's the biological jargon, but it's applicable in every field of endeavor. The judgment is to give a predicate to a subject. This book is about sociology. This is a great book. These are two types of judgment from the formal point of view. It's a subject. Here the subject is the book, and is about sociology. Sociology is the predicate, or is a great book. That's a predicate. To judge in the formal sense simply means to think. That's why people don't like being judged, but saying you look good today, that's a judgment. Usually people like being told that they are good looking. You are in good shape, that's a judgment. Namely, to subsume a subject under a predicate. To judge means simply to predicate categories to objects. Object is already a category, but to think means to categorize. That's judgment. Is it edible? I'm not sure it is. I'm sure it's not actually. That's a negative judgment. It's not edible. It belongs to the categories of non-edible objects. What was I saying? Yeah, to judge means simply to predicate, and in a sense, human beings are constantly judging. But in ordinary language, that's one of the problems. Judgment is what is considered here the judgment of the concept. I will talk about this. There's this moral aspect. Of course, there can be a moral aspect in judgment, but simply to say what something is to judge. This is a book, it's a judgment. Whether it's good or bad, true or false, these are other determination of judgment, but simply to say what it is to judge properly. Okay. Qualitative judgment, positive means, it's not good, it means to put the subject under the predicate. This is rather politically correct. This is not politically correct. That's positive judgment. Negative, not in the sense of good versus bad, simply here the predicate, it belongs to the category of politically correct books. Here a little bit less. There are more politically incorrect books than the bell curve. Yeah, just an example. Identical means a pen is a pen, a cat is a cat, a piece of paper is a piece of paper. They mean it's absurd. Yeah, infinite judgment. This pair of glasses is not an elephant. That's correct. Speak the truth. This is not an elephant. Can you deny that it's true? Yeah, that's why it's very easy to play little mind games with a little bit of logical knowledge, but seriously, to say this is not a sweatshirt, this is not a washing machine, of course that's true, but that's completely absurd and completely nonsensical. So logic is also the logic of truth. Someone who would only say a pair of glasses is a pair of glasses, or a pair of glasses is not an elephant, he would speak the truth, but he wouldn't say anything. Yeah, that's why for something to exist there has to be a difference. This is back to the start. Okay, Reflexionsurteil. One object is, some objects are, all the objects are. Here it's Anglo-Saxon logic, Russell and Whitehead. When only one is, that's a singular. When some, that's a quantitative determination, it means that some are, it means that some others are not. It can be quantitatively determined by percentages, proportions, etc. When all are, it means the one is. Here, the example, very simply, is that if all libertarians write good books, it means that libertarianism is a good or at least intelligent ideology. If all, I mean, then all libertarian scholars. It's not always the case because there are various. There's a continuum. Let us imagine if all libertarians write good books, it means that libertarianism has to be a good idea. That's just an example. But in the realm of biology, if all lions or all kangaroos share a common property, it means that lion as an animal, or the kangaroo, or if all humans share a common property, one can say man. All humans and man, they are identical. It's not the rights of all humans and the rights of man. These are two ways of expressing the same meaning, that the singular and the totality, they are identical when the totality share a common property, which is the definition of a totality. But when a property is shared by the totality of a species or a genus or a determination, it belongs to the singular. All humans mean man. All right-wingers mean the right. But then, in the right or in the left, there is a continuum, various degrees of belief, intensity of thought, culture, etc. The judgment of necessity. To judge according to substance, nature, or concrete universality, that what we call a categorical judgment, means to extract the essence of a book, one might say, actually the concept, to say that this book has a black cover with a pink geographical figure. It's true, but it's not the proper judgment. The proper judgment would be, first, it's the substance or the nature would be, it's a book about sociology. That's the proper substance. What is this? It's a book written in English. Yeah, that's true, but the substance, it's a book about sociology. To judge properly, here it's that's the difference between formal truth and real truth, namely to be able to think properly. What is this? It's a book published, I don't know when, it's a book published by Regnery, published a few years ago. What is the substance? Political ideologies, that's written on the cover. Or it's a book which costs $18.99 US. That's not the nature or the substance of the book. That's kind of, in a sense, that would be contingent. In a way, it could cost more or less. But actually, a sound libertarian economist would say, no, precisely, it cost broadly $19 because of the mode of production, etc. Yeah. Very intelligent, these American economists. When they are on the right side of the economy, I mean. So yeah, to say the price of the book or the color of the cover or even the year of publication, that's not the substantial or the nature or the concrete universality. The concrete universality would be, that's a book about economics. That's the categorical judgment. To extract the category which adequately describe what an object is. The hypothetical means if then. We find this in computer science. We find this in computer science. Hypothetical means if then. That's cause and effect. If it's written by Di Lorenzo, it probably is a good book. If it's written by Charles Murray, it's full of common sense. Is the premise correct? Indeed, it is written by Charles Murray, therefore the conclusion, it's gotta be a good book. The certainty, if the premise is true, the logical conclusions necessarily follow. Then, does Charles Murray always write good books? What kind of books do I have from Charles Murray just in front of me? Very intelligent, this Mr. Murray. By the people, rebuilding liberty, in our hands, how to abolish the welfare state. Yeah, and then there is real education. It seems that the premise is correct. Are there other good books by Charles Murray in my library? I have cleaned my room thanks to Mr. Peterson, so I know exactly where to find the one book that I want to talk about. Very intelligent, this person who makes this video, but who is he? I will not become arrogant. I've already been way too much arrogant, maybe. I will just make jokes about myself, as long as I can. Funny jokes, hopefully. Here's the missing piece. Another good book by Charles Murray. He talks about the advances of science, biology, gender, race and class, human diversity. Diversity is a determination of essence. Yeah. So, here I will be serious. We are in the realm of syllogism. Here I will be serious. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I've just showed 5 books by Charles Murray. The bell curve, probably the best. Very good. Good. Okay. And pretty good. Here, that's empiricism. I have 5 books by Mr. Charles Murray. What I call American common sense. And also American excellence, which is in the middle. I mean, Americans can be excellent on both sides, but usually they are excellent in the middle as well. Someone who is confronted by 5 good books by the same author. Empiricism, that's how the Anglo-Saxon reason, that's induction. They would say, okay, this author has produced 5 good books. I don't know how many books he has produced. Here, that's what the empirical Anglo-Saxon scientists could say. Let us imagine, we don't know how many books he has produced. But an author who is capable of producing 5 good or great books, we begin with empiricism, empirical data, 5 good books, and we can reason, that's syllogism, so I've just skipped a step just to illustrate, we can envision that the other books published by the same author, they are good as well. That would be hypothetical judgment. If an author has produced 5 good books, and if he has produced more than 5 books, there is a strong possibility that the other books might be good as well, because let us imagine that he has produced 10 books or 12 books, and only 5 are great and the others are mediocre or bad. The statistical probability is very weak. Usually when someone produces good books on a consistent basis, most of the books, or any other field of endeavor, they are usually good. That can be concluded reasonably if someone has produced several great works. There is a strong possibility, that's quantitative determination, that all the other works that he produces will be great as well. That's induction. Analogy would be Charles Murray is to common sense sociological studies what here I'm looking for let us say, well, let us balance with a little bit of leftism. Christopher Lasch, left-wing intelligent American sociology. I have books by Mr. Lasch as well, translated in French, although I may have distributed them, but I have Haven in a Heartless World and Common Life, and he also wrote about the culture of narcissism, the revolt of the elite, etc. Christopher Lasch, I haven't studied thoroughly, or many years ago, but it would be the left-wing equivalent to right-wing Charles Murray, and both they are analogous in a sense. The relationship between their political view and their ability to produce good books, they are similar in a sense. I was looking for an illustration for pop culture, the pop culture equivalent of Charles Murray, but Charles Murray is too reasonable maybe to appear in modern pop culture where it's a little bit more twisted. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's hypothetical. If then, it doesn't say that the premise is true, but if the premise is true, then it's logically necessary that the conclusion is. Disjunctive is whole and parts, namely, when a totality is considered, a disjunctive judgment means A is either B or C or D or E, namely the totality here would be the 5 books. The judgment would be, it's either a book about the economic relationship and sociological relationship between IQ and status, or about human diversity and the recent advances of science, or how to rebuild a free society, or about education, or about the welfare state. If it's the totality, if you pick one part of the whole, it's one of these 5 parts. But here it's called disjunctive, namely, and here reasoning would be, okay, the book is not the one about the welfare state. It's not about real education. It's not about the people. Which one is it? If people have focused their attention, it's either the bell curve or human diversity. It's not diversity, then it's the bell curve, which talks about human diversity. Very intelligent, this Charles Murray, because he's consistent throughout all his works. That's a sign of greatness. What was I saying? So that's the passage from judgment to syllogism, namely reasoning. And then we have the judgment of the concept, assertoric, problematic, apodictic. To assert means to say how things are, that is the moment of actuality. Problematic, how things could be, that's the moment of possibility. And apodictic, how things have to be, that's the moment of necessity. So, Wirklichkeit, possibility, necessity, in the realm of judgment, this becomes assertion, problems, apodictical assertion, one say, assertoric, problematic, apodictic. I will continue to praise. I will praise Ron Paul. On a strictly intellectual level and literary level, Charles Murray is better than Ron Paul. But Ron Paul has other qualities. But let us take the example of Ron Paul and the Fed and the School Revolution. It's a work by Ron Paul. That's an assertion. It might be interesting. Possibility. It's possible that it might be interesting. No. Sorry. It's a work about the School Revolution, and it's a book about the Fed. That's an assertion. It might be interesting book. This might be interesting book. That's problematic. There's a possibility that it might be interesting. It's written by Ron Paul, therefore it has to be interesting. It's necessary. That's not a possibility, that's a necessity. If it's about education or the Fed or any topic, if it's written by Ron Paul, if then, that's the hypothetical, it has to be interesting. These are books worth reading. Yeah. That's a syllogism. SUP, Socrates is a man, all men are mortal, therefore Socrates is mortal. And here, these are the various determinations of the syllogism. Here it's logical reasoning. I could logically reason. Mathematical syllogism means if two it's a book about libertarian intelligent economics. This book is broadly, here it's very broadly about the same topic as this one, the book by Di Lorenzo and the book by Mr. Ron Paul. This book by Chase Rachel, another very intelligent libertarian, is broadly about the same topic as the one discussed by Ron Paul. Therefore, the syllogism is that if this book and this book are similar, if this book and this book are similar, the conclusion is that this book and this book are similar. here in the good sense, in the broad sense, namely they share in common of being intelligent, well written by competent people about topics of economics and liberty, and that's the mathematical syllogism. If two objects are equal to a third, they are equal between themselves. That's how a mathematical syllogism emerges out of the process. USP, PUS, these are the various reciprocal determinations. Then we have, I've already talked about reflexion truth, the object. This is how the concept, which is the subject, which can be thought of as being the human, turns into an object, exteriorizes itself. We have a mechanism, a chemism, these are formal relations between objects. Centrality and neutrality, the objects in mechanics, they seek the center. Objects which are attracted by the earth, they seek to reach the center of the earth, that's the gravitational attraction. And in chemistry, chemical reaction, objects or substances, not the philosophical substance, but the chemical substance, seek to find neutral, to neutralize one another. So there's a quest for the center and the neutrality. This is what I talked about the process of spirit. The truth is in the middle, but the truth is not stable, it's a process, and the process of spirit is a switch toward the left and a re-establishment of balance by switching to the right, but the purpose is to reach the middle. Charles Murray is the ideal. There are more right-wing authors, but the peaceful solution is in the middle, it's common sense. Then we have teleology, that's tied with Ludwig von Mises and human action, at which this book talks about very well, namely the intention to plan, to act, to achieve a goal, a purpose, that's the final cause, the means to achieve this final purpose, and the trick of reason, the cunning of reason. I will not comment about the cunning of reason, because he played us like a damn fiddle. That's from Metal Gear Solid. Or I Got You by BB Rexha. Yeah, it's very difficult to struggle against reason. Here I will make a joke for the rationalist philosopher. Reason is nothing but a struggle against itself. That's what I've been talking about for 2 hours and 30 minutes. Because struggle is the attempt to solve the contradiction of becoming, the unity of being and nothing, that which brings about the entire process. How does reason comes to be so smart as to trick me? I'm not that smart, I'm just an idiot, so it's very easy to deceive me. But I will say what I think. I love God. It's not always the case, but that's a problem for me. For God as well, maybe, but God can be a great lover. But the problem is that he's misunderstood. I know that at some moment, me and my reason, we will laugh for the good, because not always, but it's not over. Thank God it's not over, not yet, but it has been an exhausting process. Maybe it's just the beginning, but the end of the beginning, or the beginning of the end. But the process of reason I've been studying for years now. I love God. Not always, that's my problem, but sometimes when people discover the truth about God, maybe not all people will laugh all the time, unfortunately, no. But there will be some moment of laughter. And, the idea, that's the subject and the object. From a formal standpoint, I know myself to be the idea, but it's so complex that that's kind of an empty knowledge, in a sense that formally, yes, I am the subjective idea, the world is my object. It's so overwhelmingly complex. Here I will be honest, in a stable mood. A God, whatever God is, God is what I've been talking about for 2 hours and 30 minutes in a vaguely serious way. The totality of all logical determination in the abstraction, but more seriously, the complexity. God, whatever God is, it's so overwhelmingly complex. Here I'm in a mood to be, I smile, but it's so complex. While being interesting, for those who have the faculty, it's worth studying. But here I will laugh. But my view of God and the view of most theologians with their attempt to decipher try to decipher my logic if you can. Yes, we can. Yeah. Yeah, but more seriously, it's really infinitely complex. While being interesting for those who have the possibility of studying, which I have unconsciously done, but those who might peacefully study God, because God is the here it's very simplified, but it's at first in a purely intellectual way the totality of all logical determination. But how can so much complexity emerge out of a mind? Because the world eventually is a reflection of the complexity of the mind of God, and in order to simplify one's own relationship to the world, one has to categorize, which is a simplification, a bringing back of the multiplicity of the manifold aspect to the simplicity of unity, so thought. And this is why studying logic enables. Reason is the conscious certainty of being the whole of reality, which from an abstract standpoint I know is my truth and the truth, but I do not understand how it works fully, although studying logic has helped me understood partly. Life emerges out of the mind of God, because life is self-moving, self-replicating, self-organizing process, which is the process of logic. So life emerges out of logic. The genus and the species, the sexual difference, knowledge or cognition, analytical and synthetical. Analytical means to separate what is united in order to clarify, it's an abstraction. Synthetical means to unite and to produce new knowledge. I've read, I think a couple of days ago, the introduction, the epistemology. Epistemology and praxeology, there are excellent remarks about analytical and synthetical judgments. By analyzing, one doesn't understand anything, one doesn't produce any new knowledge, but one simply clarifies what was already known. To analyze means to separate in order to see more clearly. that's Kantian. I mean, it's not Kantian, but that is one of the topics that Kant has been talking about in his book, Die Kritik der reinen Vernunft. Then the definition, the characteristic, the division, to talk, here it's the method of knowledge. To talk about an object, one has to define, which means giving a Bestimmtheit. To define, to characterize, they need to give determinations and properties. To divide, to distinguish, to separate. It brings about the construction of theorems and proofs. Here it's mostly in mathematics, but it can also be there are no theorems in Mises, but it's partly very deductive, rigorous definitions, proof, biological argumentation, etc. The will, so the knowledge means to interiorize the exterior, the will means to exteriorize the interior, and the will to do good means to bring about good in the world so that the object becomes in adequation with the subject for the good, to shape the objective world. It can be the material world or the mind of others, so that the good might be reflected. Which there's the notion of truth. Truth is a system which includes within itself a method, that's the totality. This is the presentation of the mind of God, but I have explained. I will use, do we see? I will use this as a working document. I already have, but I will do this as long as I publish videos, because it enables. These are, I summarize after more than 2 hours and 30 minutes of presentation. I summarize. This is the logical simplified. There are not all the categories, really simplified. How the categories which help me and us relates to the world, how they emerge. That's why the minds of humans are made in the image of God, in the realm of thinking and logic and reason. That's why humans can understand the world, because the world is a reflection of the mind of God. And by using the proper categories, one can understand the world properly. That's what I could say. I don't know what people will think. Here I'm not trying to say, hopefully they will like this video, but I don't know what someone who has never heard about God or logic or philosophy or Hegel might think about this. Is it clear enough? Because here I'm talking to myself seriously. I have many problems, but one of them is my inability to communicate. I've understood this recently by being into contact with ordinary people. My level of consciousness, in terms of intellect, even when I lower down as much as I can, it's still way above the level of consciousness of ordinary people, because there's a diversity of an inequality of IQ, of culture, and I try to make as accessible as possible, but I cannot go below a certain level of minimum standards of vaguely seriousness. So that's why here the purpose of this video is not to illustrate completely, because I have intentions to illustrate, to make things intelligible and accessible. Here the ambition was to provide a rather rigorous, while being accessible, presentation of the totality. Now I will just take, let us say 30 minutes. The video will be, let's say 3 hours long, maybe a little bit more, just to present the other view of the system. Maybe I will make a more thorough presentation, but just to say what am I talking about. Yeah. That was my initial intention, and I will not let myself be distracted by external events or by my own tiredness, because I'm becoming a little bit tired. I can endure physical exhaustion, but I am nonetheless a little bit tired because it's 3 a.m. 3 a.m. 11 in the morning, and I'm not suffering from sleep deprivation, but simply sometimes I do logic in the middle of the night. That's my way of. I don't know if it's work or if it's a hobby. Here I will make a poetic remark. Logic can be enlightening. Maybe that's in the night that one needs logic the most, because in broad daylight there was already enough light. I know why I have my little group therapy session in broad, not in broad daylight precisely. Yeah, that's one way of curing problems, doing logic. I will drink a glass of water, and I will comment nature as I envision this. I will make a brief comment. About the cunning of reason. I know that God lives in my mind, but I'm not in full consciousness of my own mind. Here I'm not talking about the logical aspect, I'm talking about all the aspects, psychological, emotional as well, etc. So I know that there is some sort of a disconnection in my mind between it has reduced over the past few weeks. Here I talk for myself. I used to have really a cognitive dissonance within my mind, a separation. I still do partly, but I used to talk as God, as being partly in possession of my mind. Now I am recovering the unity of my mind. That's how I envision things. So I am unifying myself intellectually, but now the other is the external world. So I suffer less from schizophrenia on a singular level. That's how I've experienced this. I am less bipolar within my mind. In terms of emotional, no, not emotional, but in terms of intellectual unity. Here it's not very clear. But now I've understood that now the other is the world. And I have to conquer, well, to conquer the world intellectually, but how should I explain this? I've understood that I would be all alone in the world, which is my world, and it's kind of frightening, but I cannot rely on anyone other than myself. And one way of curing myself, here I'm talking to myself, I guess, is to unify my mind. And I know that God knows more than I do when I speak or when I think, but I am gaining control, that's how I envision this, of my own mind. So I am healing the divide, that's how I experience this. I am healing the divide within my mind, but now there's a divide. I mean, there has already been and still is, but I am healing my inner divide, and now I have to heal the divide within the world. The divides within the world. That's how I envision things. But expressed ordinarily, it has been for many months me against myself, not always in a negative struggle. It can be against in a sense of negativity, not always for bad, but negativity in the sense of distanciation, which enables reflection, which is the determination of essence. So there has been a divide within my own mind, and there still is partly, but now the divide is between me and others, and I've realized this by talking to empirical people, ordinary people, other human beings, on a more frequent basis, that now I have to confront, not just for the negative, partly, but also for the positive, confront my own worldview with others without help. In a sense, here I will keep using my own documents as long as I can, as long as I have to, but if I am no longer able to use my documents, I have incorporated partly the view in my mind, not in a mechanistic way, in a formal way, but I am able, if I focus, to express my views for the good, also to defend myself against my own negativity, I guess. But here I'm using my pause, one might say. Again, you are really lazy, very lazy, these workers. I'm not a French worker, because I'm not French and I'm not a worker. I am partly a worker, I'm partly French, but I'm a German worker. I will not start a party last time, not a party in the sense of political party, because last time that the Germans made a party for the workers. That's a joke, that's a joke. Not always funny, but yeah. Here I will make a joke for others. I have been talking alone for months, for years eventually. I've produced hundreds of hours of content. And I know that at some moment, people, some of them, all of them, I don't know, will watch what I've been saying, talking to myself, being almost completely isolated from the world, with no interaction, not with ordinary people, with no interaction with the people that I try to communicate with in my videos. So I have been talking alone, exteriorizing my thought as being an observer. Really, that's the alien aspect of my existence. I have been socially, intellectually, psychologically isolated for years, and I have exteriorized, in a way, very naively, all my thoughts about the external world, and I will keep doing this as long as I publish videos with no reaction, almost. And at some moment, people will watch what I've been saying, and that would be a surprise for them and for me. Hopefully, not only a bad surprise, but with good aspects as well. But or I don't know precisely. I don't know. But that's part of the what kind of twisted experiment am I involved in. But yeah. Back to work. I will go faster on logic and spirit, just because I wanted to show the full view, but eventually I will just illustrate with a few comments. Okay, this is the view of nature with the categories not of logic, but the categories of the physical sciences. Do we see? Yeah. So it begins. I explain the document. I will add notes, depending, not now, but it begins like the logic, from abstract to concrete, which means more determination. So maybe I will modify, because but nature, what is nature? The totality of all the determinations. I begin with the most simple. It's time and space, which is determined geometrically. So in order to understand nature, nature is not the trees and the rivers. That would be botanics and hydrology. And the birds would be zoology. I mean, yeah, these are animals, really speaking, birds, but yeah. Geometry, these are the modern categories, which I'm not sure that it's perfectly accurate, but that's my view. Like, the logic is not complete, it's not full, it's not thorough, it's not complete, etc. The same goes with nature. It's simply to help clarify, according to a logical structure, the process and the structure of nature. So, geometry, relativity, that's the theory of Einstein, about gravitation, mostly, and massive object, stars, clusters of galaxies, clusters, etc. Quantum physics is matter on a quantum level, the structure of atoms, molecules, and elementary particles, that which constitute the material world, the physical world. So, in order to understand nature, one has to understand geometry, relativity, quantum physics, mechanics, which is the movement and the study of objects. For instance, I just take a very simple example. This pen, I drop the pen, it falls. It's a thing, an object with properties. It can be quantified, qualified, measured. It has an existence, a reason for being, namely it has been brought into being because there is a cause, an end goal. The people who produce this wanted to make a profit. There have been means used to achieve the making of the pen. It has a form. It's made of. It's a matter with a form, etc., etc. Judgment can be made about this pen. So that would be the logical predication of what the pen is. But also the pen is physically determined, namely it has a shape, a geometrical shape. It obeys the laws of gravitation. It's attracted by the curvature of space-time at the center of the Earth. It is also determined materially, namely it is composed of molecules and atoms, which obeys the laws of quantum physics. And when it falls, it also obeys the laws of mechanics. And if I hit the object, I exert a force, a pressure on the object, and it exerts a pressure back on me, and it is mathematically determined. So this is just an example that logic and the fundamental determination of nature can be used to think about all objects. This is not a zoological object, nor a botanic object, neither a geological, but it obeys the laws of relativity, quantum physics, mechanics, etc., etc. This is just an illustration. Now, so mechanics is the movement of objects. Then we have astronomy, which is the study of the heavenly spheres and the heavenly body, and cosmology, which is the history of the cosmos and its development. So the first layer of nature, that is called, in the encyclopedic view, mechanics, that would be really abstract physics, which include all these fields. So here I just explained. All the scientists which produce knowledge daily all over the world, they extract knowledge about the natural physical world, and they share their knowledge, which becomes available to everyone potentially, and they make nature intelligible by talking about relativity, quantum physics, mechanics, dynamics, astronomy, cosmology, etc. And new discoveries are made every day, every week, etc. These are the fundamental determination of nature that which we could call theoretical physics in a way. Then, in a more determined way, that is also physics but tied with chemistry, and here the determinations of the physical world. Here it applies to most, if not all, physical objects. Astronomy is not the case, but quantum physics, mechanics, relativity, and geometry applies to all physical objects. Here we have a more determined process. We have optics, which is the study of light, stars. The sun is a source of light. It can burn if it's too brilliant. Don't forget your sunglasses. The sun is a source of light. Electricity is a way of producing light. Light is an electromagnetic wave, and fire produces light. Yeah, so optics, we think in terms of not sunglasses but glasses. Optical means the ability to see more clearly, but optics, from a physical standpoint or rigorous standpoint, is the study of wave and wavelength and electromagnetic waves. Here we have planetary geology, so here it's the study, so here the study would be the stars and the sun. So strictly is not optics in a sense that it's not small sources of light, it's really the greatest sources of light in the cosmos, namely the stars, and in our solar system, the sun. Planetary geology would be the study of planets, so it is in the continuity of astronomy, but it is more determined. Planetary geology, and here would be the study of the more thorough study of planets, the volcanoes, the earthquakes and seismic activity, the climate and the meteorology. So in order to study nature, in the case of planet Earth, but all planets, but eventually the planet that humans inhabit, namely the Earth, all these determinations have to be taken into account. The impact of the sun on the Earth, the geological determination of Earth, the volcanoes, the seismology, the earthquakes, the climate and the meteorology, but it's valid for every planet in a way. Here it's specific for planet Earth, but here it's for every planet. Then we have, on a smaller level, but it is also reflected on a greater level, chemical reactions and chemical interaction, namely it's the interaction of material objects and substances and their transformation by reciprocal interaction through the exchange of electrons, the tying and separation, transformation, etc. That's chemistry, the science which studies the transformation of matter and material substance. Acoustics is the theory of sound, thermodynamics of heat and temperature, namely the physical world is determined by the structure of time and space, the structure of matter, the structure of the celestial bodies, and on a smaller scale, a more observable way. I mean, the stars and the planets can be observed with one's eyes or telescope, but in a more day-to-day basis, chemistry, acoustics, and thermodynamics is simply sounds, the transformation of matter by chemical reactions, and heating and the production of energy in a way. So these are experiences that humans have in their everyday life. But here is the theoretical aspect. This is how nature is structured, and these are the branches of science which study the transformation of nature. Then we have alchemy, electricity, magnetism. So all these aspects in orange, these are really a mixture of chemistry and physics. Here we have the most abstract determination of physics. Here we have more concrete ones. But the previous determinations are contained within the subsequent, within the following, like in the logical process. And so here, electromagnetism, we have, for instance, Maxwell, quantum physics, these are the scientists of the earlier 20th century in the history of sciences, Einstein, Newton. It's not chronological, it's conceptual, one might say. Optics, all great scientists have thought about the nature of light and photons and electromagnetic waves or particles or both, etc. And here, in a more determined way, here that would be organic life, but I have to... The planet is thought of as being an organism. In order to think properly, Gaia, as the ecologists call this, it has to be thought about correctly and thoroughly, and here it's very simplified, but when people talk about the planet, we have to save the planet, we have to restore Gaia, etc. These are the fundamental determination which help conceptualize the planet as a living whole, a living totality. Geological, the soils, mineralogy, how do you call this? The metals and the rocks and the physical objects which are contained within the soils, partly the resources in a way. Oceanography is the study of ocean, water, inland water, lakes, rivers, etc. And physical geography, namely topography, landscapes, etc. So that's how the planet Earth in the solar system, with the determination of volcanoes, earthquakes, the climate and meteorology, we find this on Earth as well. But the planet Earth is a particularization of the universal determination of celestial bodies, one might say, or physical, cosmic physical object, one might say. So to think, here really simplified, to think about the planet properly, one has to take into account all these aspects. Then there is biology, which is really more a step further into the expansion of life, one might say. Biology, genetics, bacteriology and mycology, they are the study of bacteria and mycelia or mushrooms, one might say. Botanics, this is plant, and ecology, it's the totality of the interaction of all the living organisms with their environment. So ecologists want to think thoroughly and seriously about their discipline. Ecology is not political at first, it's scientific, namely it's the science of the interaction of living organisms with their environment. It's partly tied with economics in the realm of humans, one might say, and these are the determinations of Gaia in a way, namely the geological and biological determinations which interact with one another in a solar system which obeys at all levels the laws of the various branches of physics and chemistry. And here is what we call animal zoology, with more developed organisms. Paleontology is the study of ancient forms of life, zoology the study of animals, and in order to understand a type, a variety, a kind, these are particularization, species of the genus of animals, one has to understand their environment, how they have evolved in the evolutionary perspective. Ethology is the study of animal behavior, and here I will use my own ID, I might say, to illustrate analogy, which is a figure of reasoning that we talked about earlier. Ethology is to zoology what sociobiology is to anthropology, namely to study the behavior of animals. This is called ethology. To study the behavior of humans, the biological behavior, the biological component of human behavior, this is sociobiology. So zoology are all animals, anthropology are only human animals with their cultural, ethnic, religious aspect. Anatomy. Do I need to illustrate? Maybe we'll see that later. Physiognomy or anatomy is the structure of organic bodies, of at least highly developed, mostly highly developed animals, and physiology is the function, the interaction, the circulation of the various parts of the body. And here, whole and parts. An organism is a totality in which all the parts are means and ends, namely each organ functions for the sake of the totality. That's the definition of an organism, and this is logically determined. Yeah, that's why life is an image of the ID in a way. That's, in ordinary language, why God created life in humans and animals. I simplify. The neurosciences would be the study of the brain, which is a particular part of the anatomy of thinking humans and of highly developed animals. Taxonomy is the classification of living organisms, and humans, since humans are animals, animals are classified by scientists, therefore humans are classified by scientists, which is sometimes called racism. But race realism is simply intelligent classification of humans for the purpose of understanding and developing science and trying to avoid some mistakes, one might say. And medicine is the theory of how to heal the anatomy, physiognomy, neurobiology of either animals or humans as well. So that would be biology, the various fundamental branches of biology, and each topic can be subdivided into further particular determinations. And yeah, that's what I could say. So I will show the full picture. When people think about nature, if they want to think thoroughly, they have to think about all the categories in a rigorous way, and there are new breakthroughs, new advances in the natural sciences, which we would call physics, chemistry, earth sciences, and biology, if we really simplify with the categories of most modern educational system, at least in the West. Every determination is found at all the levels, namely animals. They are subject to the laws of gravity, to the laws of chemistry, the chemical reaction within the organism. That's why it's sometimes said that biology is a very complex form of chemistry. And chemistry is a complex form of physical interaction in a way, on the level of electrons and on the level of atoms and molecules. And yeah, so to think properly, here it's just the conceptual frame. To think properly about nature, one has to have the full view, the full picture, and the categories of logic. I just take a few examples. Everything can be quantified in nature. The movement of object, that's the quantification of object. That's since Galileo, the 17th century, nature is considered from a mathematical perspective because everything has a quantity. So everything can be measured, quantitative, intensity, extension, continuity, discretion, etc., etc. Wavelength, sound waves, pressure. In physics, these are quantitatively determined. The intensity of earthquakes or volcano eruption, etc., etc. The gravitational attraction of celestial bodies or the Earth can be quantitatively determined, etc. Positive and negative, we find this in electricity and magnetism with polarity and positive and negative charges. The whole and the part, we find this in organics, etc. So we find the categories of logic throughout the entire realm of nature because simply nature is a reflection of the mind of God. That's why nature is rational. The mystery of Einstein, how come that we can understand the universe, here's a very simplified explanation. The fact that I am, how do you call this in English? Expressing the fact that I'm tired is probably linked to my brain activity because I've been working and producing video for hours and hours after a day of work, one might say. So I have neurobiological reactions, which are physiological manifestation of an inner state of exhaustion. I manifest this through lowest capacity for attention and focus, so I'm becoming less competitive in a sense. I am less the quality of my explanation is declining, my saliva is reducing in a sense that my mouth is becoming dry because I've been speaking for a lot of time. My eyes are becoming a little bit tired, maybe because there is the light from the projector and because I haven't slept, but I can still go on. But this is an example that my brain and my physiology are being influenced by the external condition, physical, etc., etc., and it has an impact upon the quality or the declining quality of my expression when people are tired, whether these are sportsmen or people who speak, they decline a little bit. But the purpose is to maintain high standards even within decline. Like America, even when America is declining, it's still okay. It's better than okay, but I will conclude by the view of Geist. But I'm not aware of the chemical and physiological reaction and activities within my body, but or my brain. But I see the effects. My eyes are a little bit tired, but I will not. I have a job to finish, and then I will go to sleep because. The reason why I have faith to communicate is because the complexity, even here it's very simplified, the complexity. So the ideal methodological principle to be applied in the search for knowledge and understanding is to understand an object through all its determinations. To have the view of the totality in mind when one ever talks about any topic, which of course is almost impossible, it's so complex, but simplifying a very complex task, analyzing, namely to separate, to distinguish, to simplify is the first step. And here, in the realm of Geist, it's a little bit more simple because people are more familiar with the determinations of spirit. And here is my view of a human society. I'm not saying that it's the truth, or it can be modified, improved, it can be questioned, but it's a tool to help. So I will just show the full picture. Yeah, that's my view of a human society through the categories of the various institutions. And I will comment briefly. So we have in the continuity of continuity and discretion are conceptually united. I don't know when I started to decline physically, but it's in the continuity of a very prolonged effort. Okay, 3 hours. So basically I've been making videos for almost 6 hours without pause after an entire day, but I can keep going. So Geist, which is the psyche, the mind, the consciousness, and the spirit, emerges. Here I simplify. Emerges out of nature. Namely, sociobiology is the transition between the zoological determinations of man and his social determination. So sociobiology can be applied to most social animals, but specifically to man in the context of human society. And here the simplification. Humans are sociobiologically determined. I will not pick the books. I could, but here there's a book by Edward O. Wilson. I will not show the books, I will just comment. Humans, it enables, if people have spent more than 3 hours watching this, I don't know, I'm not sure that I need further explanation, but it enables to explain the determination of human behavior. Namely, every human is determined sociobiologically, namely the behavior of humans in terms of cooperation, aggression, competition, search for status, male and female relationship, hierarchy status, etc. It's sociobiologically determined, and this knowledge is made widely available through people like Jordan Peterson and David Booth in their talk show. It's becoming widely available, like all the other knowledge that I've talked about nature, but here it's more appealing, maybe, that's a determination of attraction, because it helps understand other human beings. They act sociobiologically, unconsciously, and there's partly freedom in understanding one's own unconscious determinism, And yeah, so demography is the study of human population, and a people is demographically determined. The generation, mostly the ethnic balance, the gender balance, namely the male-female ratio, but also the ethnic origin of the population and the age of the population, the fertility rates, etc., all the determination of demography. But to understand a human society, this is the foundation, the psyche, which begins with anthropology in a broader sense. One has to understand the demography, namely every society. The foundation is first the people, namely the demographic population. Then anthropology is the study of human behavior, human as humans, which include social interaction, and here we have ethnic and sexual differences, what we would call race realism, and sexual difference studies, not gender study, but sexual differences. Namely, every human has an ethnic, a genetic determination, and a gender at birth. He belongs to a given demographic determination in terms of age, pyramid structure, etc., and he is sociobiologically determined. So in order to understand one human being and all other human beings eventually, one has to understand that each acts the way he or she does because of all these determinations. So that's you know, on a collective level, although sexual, gender, and sex is individual, but it's on a collective here, it's on a more individual level, namely, and if I had to make this clear, all the determination, they follow the previous one. It's a continuous process. These are discrete categorization, but it's in the continuity. So every human has a physiognomy, namely a structure of the face, and the structure of one's face, bones, features, facial features, etc., influences one's own behavior and one's own relation to the external world. I know this because my physiognomy has partly played a role in my psychological and intellectual development. Nietzsche knew this. People who suffer from physical flaws, they can be harmed or experience this as being hurt, or people who are physically privileged, it's easier for them in life, in the social interactions, etc., etc. Personality, that would be the tendencies, the aspects, the characteristics, the property of humans on a singular level. That's part of the soul. To determine what the soul of a human is, one has to study and to understand his or her personality. Usually, these are scientists who do this for others as their patient subjects, and usually most people, they are attracted, they find an other's personality attractive or repulsive, but they do not necessarily understand why, because it's mysterious in a sense that they do not have the scientific mindset to analyze everything. The talent, each individual has a talent, more or less intense, and an intensive talent will be more extended, namely a person with a great talent will have a lot of success. Singers, writers, politicians, sportsmen, actors, etc., etc. Every human has a talent, and in order to be to exploit the maximum of his ability, one has to find one's best talent. Here, that's economics. Ricardo, how do you call this? Specialization. Do what you're the best at, and let others do what they are good at. That's comparative. The theory of comparative advantages. Comparative advantages. If everyone focuses on an individual level, but also on a level of groups and even nations, that's the foundation of the division of labor. Namely, each individual is given a talent. Some have many talents, but to exploit one's talent to the best of one's ability means to recognize the talent and to exploit it. And so that's the individual determinations of the soul. I have been a very poor communicator. I've failed at communicating. I'm not sure that it's because I lack talent intellectually, but maybe emotional and social intelligence. I will try to work on this as long as I can. But yeah, then we have evolutionary psychology, which is a more developed view of sociobiology. So actually it's psychology, but with the evolutionary aspect. Then psychiatry and psychoanalysis. This is what I've been thinking about recently, consciously I mean. So every human is determined psychologically, psychiatric tendencies, it can be ADHD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, autism, Asperger syndrome, etc., etc., and has psychoanalytical issues, more or less conscious, more or less prevalent, etc., etc. These are all determinations of the soul. So to know one's soul and the soul of another, one has to know about all these determinations, at least in the broad aspect. Yeah. Psychology, these are some of the branches. Introspection means the interiority of the soul, the inner emotions and feelings in a way. Emotions, feelings, imagination, memory, tendencies. So this would be the psychology of someone in a more usual way, but it contains all the previous determination, namely the physiognomy, the ethnic and sexual identity, the age of a person, the psychiatric tendencies, etc., or problems. They will have an impact upon the psychology of someone. Language is a means of exteriorizing one's own inner determinations. I mean, the inner makes itself outer through language, and semiotics is the theory of signs, communicating through signs and eventually symbols. Linguistics is the study of languages, and grammar, the proper rules of how to speak properly. Not necessarily because there is normative grammar and there is descriptive grammar, but basically, what is the difference between linguistics and grammar? There is probably, it's alright, there is a fundamental definition, a determination, etc., etc., but basically it's the theory of language. And then intelligence, thought, this is tied to logic, and IQ, this is the quantitative measure of intelligence. So to determine an individual psychologically is to know about these determination and to know oneself, one's own determination, and knowing one's own IQ can be a source of comfort and relief, but also it can bring problems of lack of confidence or overconfidence or yeah, but it's very useful for the self and for others to know what the IQ of the other is, because it has a tremendous impact upon social interaction, economic interaction, interpersonal interaction, etc., etc. Yeah. Okay, so here is my vision of. So I try to express myself as intelligibly. I will use this, as long as I'm in video, as a working document, but I will begin. Yeah. A people composed of individuals exteriorizes itself first through language, and language is a means of communication, and human beings, which are biologically, sociobiologically determined, gather together and form institutions, which are modes of living collectively together. And here it's the formal presentation of most, or the most important institutions of most human societies. So an institution is not a physical object, it is being made manifest through physical exteriorization, buildings, ceremonies, working and shaping the external environment, but it's not physical in a sense. That's why it's more spiritual. It's a further progression of spirit, in a sense that the educational system, the health system, politics, of course there are buildings, but what makes these institutions thrive or rise or fall or decline is the intellectual interaction between the members who compose these institutions, namely the educational system. That's the good aspect. Doesn't need the office and the buildings, etc., to function. The internet can become an educational system. It needs the infrastructure, but the classrooms, etc., it's not necessary. The parliament, the senate, the congress, it's a physical location, but the institution, it's in the mind of the senators, the congressmen, etc., etc. There is a written text, which is the constitution, but the constitution has to actualize itself. That's the Grund, and in order to come into existence, there are people who have to be the carriers and the bearers of the spirit of the constitution. So that's why here it's, in a sense, immaterial, although it produces material effect, but it's a realm of ideas, in a sense, more so than the anthropological, sociobiological. But a society is the reflection, the manifestation, these are determination of essence, of the people which make this society. If the people is being replaced or changed or modified, the spirit of the institution will change as well. And education is not always sufficient. Yeah. So, in my view, the building block of a society would be the family with the institution of marriage, the education, in a sense really of here, education of behavior, values, etc. Here it would be more instruction. We call this educational system, but the purpose of the educational system is supposed to be to instruct, not to educate. It is the family in most societies, or the group or the tribe, which is supposed to educate and teach the values, etc. The educational system is supposed to teach the knowledge. If it does too much values teaching, the values are sometimes dubious and it can contradict the values of the family, etc., etc. Or, well, so that's the building block. A society is built upon family, marriage, education. It's not always the case. There are societies where there are no marriages. Usually they are not necessarily very successful, but the most important model is, in modernity, is precisely the one man, one woman marriage, heterosexual marriage, and men and women relationship. Here we have sexual differences from a sociobiological standpoint. Here we have gender dynamics from a more social standpoint, but the two are connected. They are in the continuity of one another, but they are more or less distinct because discretion, continuity, identity difference, etc., etc. But here it's sexual differences strictly biologically, sociobiologically. Here it's more social. Yeah. So the foundation, as I envision this, is the people in the smaller cellular unit of a society, maybe the family, and it produces all sorts of institutions, economic and sociological. So here we have the production of wealth, which has to be financed, the division of the social whole and the labors, the shaping of the external territory, the landscape through urbanization and working and modifying the external environment. So every society shapes its own environment in one way or another. It can be destructive, polluting, bring about ugliness, etc., etc., or function and efficiency, etc., etc. Land use is the rationalization of the physical and geological resources. So we have economics. Here it's really simplified. Economics can be subdivided into an infinite variety of branches, but it's simply, to understand economics, it cannot be disconnected from sociology, of course, but from the educational system. If the educational system fails, the economy will falter. The health system is dependent on finance by economics. Poor countries or countries whose economy is deficient or insufficient will have a poor educational system. Yeah, so the building block, as I envision this, is the family with the behavior, responsibility, ethics, the notion of good and evil. But every field here, everything is interconnected in reciprocal interaction. Namely, the educational system partly teaches behavior, so do the media, the social media, the means of communication, but these can be contradictory sometimes, and the behavior shapes men and women which comprise society, which reciprocally shape sociology, economics, etc. I just take an example. Depending on the social status of a male, he will have access to better or less interesting females, so it will influence marriage, sociology, behavior, etc. It's interconnected. Right? One way of getting interesting women to marry in modern Western and modern developed society is through the educational system, through study, getting a diploma, social recognition, social status, etc. etc. Here, the spatial representation, it's really to simplify. Economics and sociology can be put together, but it's broadly the more fundamental determinations, and from these determinations, the rest flows and follows. Here we have politics, how to manage the distribution of resources. So here's how to create resources, here is how to steal the resources from the people and to redistribute to others. That's politics. And the purpose of libertarianism is to abolish politics. No more politics. It will be a tremendous reduction of waste of time. It will be earning a lot of time but reducing the political talks. But of course it's difficult because people are, for sociobiological reasons, partly are attracted to politics, but usually in modern society the politicians, they ruin the wealth created by the workers by implementing taxes, etc. So here we have rights, which is supposed to legislate upon the behavior and the interaction between the various members of society, so that society might be as prosperous as possible. When the politicians in power have the good of society in their best interest, crime is the violation of rights, property rights is the fundamental individual assurance by the society that the individual will not be deprived of his own individual property. Contracts is the ability to interact between consenting, intelligent, mature, intelligent not always, but consenting, mature humans for the exchange of private property, which enable peaceful transaction and the circulation of wealth and exchanges. The theory of natural rights. We see here we have, here these will be rights on an individual level. Here we have law on a more collective level with the judicial system, the police and prisons to put criminals. Yeah, so that would be how to manage the interaction between individuals with competing, sometimes conflicting interests within the framework of society. The culture, the customs, sport and entertainment, these are modern categories, mostly sport, although it existed partly in ancient societies, but I put this here, but it can be placed anywhere. It's just that the culture, in the broader sense of a people, is the result of all the other determinations, from sociobiology to economics, education, family, behavior, etc. And it reciprocally determines the rest. Namely, the economy is determined by the culture, the customs of the people. Some people prefer some types of behavior, ways of life, etc., etc. I put this here, but it pervades the entire structure, like everything else. Actually, it's not everything pervades everything else. But in order to make intelligible, to produce intelligibility, I had to categorize. That's the purpose. Pure being is just pure being. It categorizes itself by separating itself, analyzing itself, distinguishing itself from itself, giving itself a content. And here are the categories. So here we have politics, the politician and the government, with the separation of powers. Legislative means to vote the laws, executive means to implement the laws, and judicial means to make sure that the laws are respected. So these are the classical distinction in Western political history through Montesquieu, etc. But basically, that's the one and the many. The government is one, the political power is one, but there are many branches, many kinds of power, etc., etc. The politicians and the government, they are financed by the taxes of the workers. The constitution is the fundamental law that's Grund in existence. All the laws which come into existence, they have to respect the fundamental determination of the constitution. This is the Grund, the legislative ground of a country. But in order to protect a constitution or to change a constitution, it's an idea, but there has to be a people who preserve the laws. That's why if the people is changed, the laws of a country can change. And the reciprocal is true. If there are changes of legislation, it can bring about the change of the people. This is what has happened in the chronological perspective over the course of the second half of the 20th century. Money and banking, it's partly tied with finance. This is the blood of the society, the blood of the economy, namely those who create money and who exchange values. They can corrupt the politician to encourage them or force them to modify the laws which have an impact upon the economy, upon the sociology, the demographics, etc., etc. So when people talk about the elites or the bankers, they have to be recontextualized with all the categories. People talk usually about one aspect: crime, corruption of politics, inequalities in sociology or in economics, the corruption of the banking system, etc., etc. But it can be relevant and even good in terms of analysis and comprehension. Here, socialism would be the economic system which has an impact upon rights, property rights, political affiliations and political manipulations and political quest for power, etc. Media with the ideology being spread, etc., etc. This what I call this tool, this working tool, is simply the formal map. Hopefully it's clear after more than 3.5 hours, to help contextualize oneself within a society and the intellectual and spiritual life of a society and others. It seems like nothing very useful. It's the view of the totality as clear as I can make this without sacrificing the intellectual aspect and without sacrificing the intellectual rigor, while making this as accessible as possible. So it seems like empty talk, but actually it's very useful, because take a book like this about economics. In order to understand socialism, one has to understand all the aspects of society. This book talks about most aspects, but the sociobiological, demographic, anthropological, ethnic, sexual aspect, they have to be taken into consideration in order to make the totality intelligible. Yeah. So now I will comment the other aspect. We see. Yeah, so here we have, still in connection with the rest, the media, the social media, the communication. Here it's predominant in modern society, but the media, they are kind of the intermediary between the government and the people. They are tied with economics, with monetary and monetary policies and banking and finance, and they reflect, they are a mirror partly, which can be a distorted mirror. They give a view of the whole society, and here that's really the most useful aspect. It's not just that, but it's very important in the sense that when we look at the news, we see pieces of information, but if it is not recontextualized within the totality, it's very easy to manipulate or to deceive by speaking just part of the truth. It's not even done consciously by the journalist. But if an information, a piece of information, is not recontextualized within the context of a whole society, and eventually through economics, finance, law, the circulation of information, the infrastructure, all human societies, or most of human societies, are interconnected through social media, a means of communication, the internet, technology. Information can circulate in real time. It's a new phenomenon in a historical perspective, but even before that advent, the economic interconnectedness, the geopolitical, diplomatic, energetic interconnectedness of all societies make it so that if a piece of information is not recontextualized within the totality, it is simply unintelligible. That's why das Wahre ist das Ganze, the truth is the whole, namely to understand one society and to understand all societies eventually, it has to be contextualized. What are you talking about? Who is talking about what? From what perspective? This has been the purpose of this video. I will use this for myself. I don't expect others to do what I don't do myself. So I use this document with my own intellect, my own experience, that to understand the information will come from everywhere. Of course, I do not stay staring at this all day long. I could, that would be interesting, but just what I try to do, it's the result of months and years of work. It seems like it's completely simple. I borrowed most of my ideas from others, mostly from Hegel, but it's very useful. And my good aspect wants to share the utility with others, but my negative aspect is that no one seems to care. So if they don't, if you don't, I will, and I will use this to try to make the world intelligible, to try to solve problems by seeing the interconnectedness of everything. So here, politics exteriorizes itself through diplomacy, the military, geopolitics and history. The deep state and the secret services, when people talk about the elites, the secret elites, the invisible government, usually the conspiracy theory, they talk about just the deep state. But the deep state has to be seen in all its aspects and all its influence upon the whole of society. And the categorization of the totality enables to make things intelligible. The deep state, they are usually in connection with money, banking, finance. So here, for instance, geopolitics, diplomacy, military history, they can be put together. Money, banking, finance, they can be put together as well, but it's nonetheless structured in the sense that finance usually is really tied with economics, in the sense that, of course, it's connected with finance and banking, but for every economic project there has to be funds raised to bring about the project. That would be the Ansicht and the Sein für Anders. In order to be real, an economic project has to be financed. And here are international activities through lobbies, non-governmental organizations, globalism, geopolitics, etc., etc. Transport and energy, these are the physical infrastructure of a society. That is the circulation of money, information, capital throughout all the sphere of society. This is the transport and the physical movement and transportation of all the flux within a society. It requires energy, gas, oil, electricity, and infrastructures, roads, railways, airplanes and airports, etc., etc. Technology, which is a byproduct of economics, and an intelligent, hardworking, inventive people. So all the technological innovations, the telephone, the internet, big data, they are technological derivatives. And and every aspect, here it's a formal presentation, but every individual is in connection with his or her society from a legislative standpoint, but also a socio-biological and demographic standpoint, depending on the context, because there can be one people divided in various states, one state with various peoples, culturally, ethnically, anthropologically. The circulation of information becomes accessible in real time on a global scale. That's why every person, it's clear for me, but I don't know if it's clear, I'm not sure it's clear for anyone else. Every information, anyone can study any other society in real time if one has the leisure, the intelligence, because the whole of human activity, intellectual, political, economic, social, cultural, spiritual, is made available through the lens of the internet, but one just needs the time, the intelligence, the financial means, and the conceptual structure, which I've been trying to provide for almost 4 hours now. And this is what I will use this as a working document. If I can improve, I can improve, but I will improve this, but it's just the formal presentation. And the head of the government, the world leaders, they are just one individual, they are just individual reflecting the totality. They are psychologically determined through physiognomy, personality, talent, psychiatric and psychoanalytical problems, but they reflect, they manifest an entire society, sometimes more or less adequately. That's where there are tensions between the elites and the people, but the government is in a way a reflection of the people, and sometimes the opposite is true as well. The people is a reflection of the government when the government decides to change the people. But this is how one society can be envisioned, and the interaction between all societies make it a world society which is not unified by law or by... it is also already unconscious, not unconscious, implicitly unified economically, but not by law or by politics, by technology also partly in developed countries. But yeah, this is my view of a society, and the usefulness that I will use for myself is that it enables to understand the information which come from everywhere at a very high speed, and not to get lost. This can be very, very useful. And art, religion, and philosophy. Art reflects, in a sense of reflection, like in a mirror. Art is a reflection of the life of a society, of a particular society, at a particular era, a particular time, but also it's partly universal, depending on the quality. It's more or less universal, and the greatest artists, they are the more universal because they express truths about the human psyche, the human condition, which are valid for every human. So artists reflect, express, exteriorize in a way the society in which they live, or the times in which they live. That's why studying pop culture is a great means to understand the sociology and the psychology of a people and of a society. Religion, partly, it's a reflection of a society, and reciprocally, the religious values of a people are being reflected in its legislation, its ethics, its behavior, etc., etc. And philosophy is nothing but the conceptual grasping of the totality of the process from logic, nature, and Geist in all its aspects, and philosophy is simply the totality thinking itself, and the philosopher is the individual who thinks about the whole, the totality, in a rigorous way. It's very difficult because there are a tremendous amount of information, but yeah, this is the view that I have developed over the months and the years. I could comment in a rigorous way, but that's not the purpose. I don't know. Maybe I will not comment rigorously, but I just try to make intelligible. Okay, 3 hours and 50 minutes, let's say, to make my view of the totality intelligible. Logic, nature, Geist, they are interconnected, because every society has as a foundation its people, but is founded upon a soil and a geographical location which obeys the laws of nature and which are determined within the frame of the astronomical position of the planets within the solar system, etc., etc. And all of this is logically determined, in a sense that the categories here, the logic is not seen immediately, but a whole and its part, the positive and the negative, the interior and the exterior, the quantitative determination. Nature can be quantified, but society as well. Economics is the realm of quantification, so is partly sociology, politics can be quantified, etc., etc. So, yeah. These are the documents that I wanted to share. A rather rigorous presentation, not thorough, not complete, it's done. Improvisation. The first video, which is the previous one, about the phenomenal appearance of spirit, was partly structured. This one, which is 3 hours and 50 minutes long, is more improvised, although the material is here, and I will use my own documents and I will share my worldview. I will sleep. I will sleep for a few hours. Then I will meditate. What I've been doing. I will do my daily routine as long as I can, because I know it's the right thing to do. Not under any circumstances, but as long as I can, it's the proper thing to do. And I will try to think and to meditate. And I will keep talking as long as I can. As long as I have to. Maybe as long as I want to. I don't know. But yeah. As of now, I need to rest. I will upload the video and publish when I deem the moment proper. And yeah, these are my working documents, and the rest is inscribed in my mind. This is my legacy, maybe. But I'm not done yet. I still have punchlines to deliver, maybe. If I punch people, it comes back. That's action, reaction, I know. But yeah, this is my view of the totality of being, simplified. That's just the formal structure, but with the adequate commentaries. I have believed for a very long time that all the others were competent and super smart, and I wasn't. I've also believed the opposite at some moment, but I will not make the mistake of believing the opposite precisely. I have explained in a very intelligible way my view of the totality. The others who can find enlightenment, light, clarity in this work, they will be able to understand themselves. I cannot think for everyone else consciously as an individual. That's the limit of the singular. But as long as I live and breathe, I will think and speak for what I consider to be good. My vision of good and evil sometimes is dubious. But yeah. It's just, I just conclude, it's just the formal presentation of the totality of being, but here of a human society, with all the layers, all the aspects, and they are all reciprocally determining one another. And this is why God, whatever God is the totality of being becoming conscious of itself. That's the formal definition. The complexity. Even when I try to simplify to the utmost for myself and for others, to simplify, to make things intelligible, but reality moves at such a speed that it's very difficult to compete, if that's a competition. But yeah. I have shared what I call my documents. I still have a lot of other documents, but my material documents, one might say, and this is, as long as I express myself, I will use this, because this is how I view the world in a formal aspect. In a formal aspect, I have showed the Phenomenology of Spirit, logic, nature, Geist. This is what enables me to clarify and understand the world in which I exist. Yeah. Now I will take a rest for a few hours, and I will keep working while following my own ethical principle as long as I have to, as long as I can, as long as they help me find stability and inner order and peace. Yeah. That's what I could say in almost 4 hours, plus the previous video. In almost 4 hours.